So
Well,
I would counter that with saying that yes, it's
Some hoodlums are driving outside Adam's house. You might have to go
absolutely
sort them out.
That's been an
some
intro clip
villains.
before.
that's probably the French celebrating their narrow own goal win there.
Escape. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gollum's Gamers, where today we are back with another tier list episode. I'm not exactly sure what episode of the podcast this is. I think it's 46. I'm not too sure on that. Don't quote me. But we are back with another tier list episode.
He'll edit it in post.
And yes, today we are going to be doing a Cavalry tier list. It's been quite a while since we've done a tier list episode, but this is going to be a Cavalry tier list. And tonight, for the Spotify listeners, I'm joined by Ash and Adam, and we have in the house, very short notice, Mr. Dave Farmer from Any Heroics has jumped in.
Yes.
Very last
Let's
second
go, Farmer.
to join us this evening. So, Dave, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. It is your return since the race, which was outstanding, wasn't it?
The most beast podcast ever.
It's been a minute. When was that? That would have been like November, right?
It
Something
was
like that.
late last year. I think the finale was the last event to go. So, yeah.
Last 100, so it would have been like
Yes.
early December, maybe.
Yeah. Late last year. So, no, thank you very much for coming on and, yeah, joining us for the Cavalry tier list. I think, Adam, you were saying that after the last episode, you were looking to do another tier list soon because it's been a while since you've done one. And they're spicy episodes.
Yeah, we love a tier list, don't we?
We do. It's been a while since you've done
I
one.
think, as the start of the pod, we need to pay some respects to James Goble. Unfortunately, he has ligma and couldn't join us tonight. So,
Yeah.
hope you
And
get well soon, James.
yeah, and that is why James Goble, as the viewers can see, is the bottom tier this week. I'm afraid, James, you put yourself in it. I was struggling on thinking of what to put as the bottom tier, and then you didn't turn up the pods. I thought, perfect. So, but if you do want to help us name the bottom tier for our next tier list, let us know. Lord of the Spins as well.
Patreon subscribers will tell you
Ooh,
what to
that's a
put
little
in.
teaser right there.
Comment below because we're out of ideas.
Yes,
There's nothing
these are
between these
all-
eyes.
So these are all troop cav.
So yes, the caveat here is that it is just standard like infantry warrior cavalry models. Now, I haven't included chariots, so they do have the warrior and cavalry keywords, but I thought it's hard to compare, say, a Warg Rider and the Iron Heels chariot. You know, like
We basically thought,
Yeah, well,
after the Hero of Lemon tournament where Sam just annihilated everyone with his chariots, it would be too obvious. So we thought we'd leave chariots out of that because they're
it's
just too
interesting
OP.
you've included the Warg Marauder, which is a similarly janky profile to the Candice Charioteer. I'll agree with you, the Iron Hills Chariot isn't in there, but then the Iron Hills Chariot technically doesn't have the cavalry keyword, so
I'm pretty sure it does. I checked
I
earlier.
think it does.
Yeah,
Well, there's a whole
it's-
debate about whether or not it gets 3 or 5 inches when marching, but that's a whole different
Oh, I
story.
see. I didn't think of that. Well, no, I checked it. It had warrior and cavalry, and it had the Iron Heels captain as like an upgrade.
Sure, yeah,
So it wasn't
that must
actually included.
that might be, yeah. I might
Yeah,
be
so,
remembering
anyway,
something there.
yeah.
So, are we factoring in just in a vacuum, or are we trying to factor in the context for the list?
as
Context
is,
of the list, I think, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, we don't
Okay.
think these things in it ahead of time. So in context,
This
of
is the fun
I'm
mate.
bringing it up because, like, what often happens in these things, as someone who listens to them from time to time, is so you'll say at the start, "We're going to do it in this context," and then immediately forget and not do that.
you have said that many
Reference.
times, actually. Yeah,
I know it's kind of charming, so I'm kind of excited to be part of that failure.
Yeah.
See, that's the fun. When you're in the heat
That's
of the
the fun.
debate, and when it backs your argument to change the context of
Yes,
how we're
you-
ranking them, you can use that tool
You-
at all costs.
you just spin it around.
Use the goalpost at full speed. Yeah,
I think
Great.
I think this is the moment we point out the link to the monster tier list just down below.
Yes, fantastic content right there.
Let's have me in the comments starting arguments.
Yeah, that was possibly our best tier list, I'd say. I mean, yeah, personally. We've also included though the Arnor Cav as well. Maybe a little bit controversial here, but just going to be like a general, on where we think it might sit. Obviously, there could be people that end up watching this long after the Arnor Cav are released, but at this point, the stat line or anything hasn't been announced. Only what was in the Warhammer community article. So We'll slot it in somewhere.
And it'd be good actually to get some of the farmer's speculation on how he thinks the Arnold Cav will be, because
Yeah.
where we're
Yeah.
going to rank them.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get underway. But before we do, you can find us on Instagram and Spotify by following the link in the description down below.
Yippee!
Yes, sir. Right. Well, let's kick things
Farmer,
off.
when
on.
are any heroics getting an Instagram? When's that happening?
Pass. I'm not in
Stephen
control
Denby.
of that.
Or
That would
Okay.
be on Stephen or Josh or Elliot or basically anyone who's not me, ideally.
anyone you.
Love it.
Shout out to the Instagram followers. Okay, let's start things off then with the Rider of Rohan. I thought, what more of a traditional cavalry model is there than
To
the
start with,
Rider of Rohan?
God,
14 points.
I'm feeling
like 4 on the charge. Axes in the pocket. Most of the time, pure or legendary legion, so they get the strength on the charge.
He's cooking.
On the profile.
It's a solid profile.
you can take a
You get
bow and a
you get-
shield on this guy.
Yeah.
Well, it gets them included as well. You don't even have to take them as upgrades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe. So, I always think so. Realistically, when you talk about Riders of Rohan, you're talking about Riders of Theoden.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Or, I mean, is that or pure Rohan, which is a slightly different kettle of fish. You can sometimes get pure Rohan like combo lists with pure Riders. Basically, the main thing that Riders give you is access to 100% bows and skirmishing, in my opinion.
Because I think if you're taking like
Yeah.
say, for example, a Rohan Loth list or something, for example, you're probably just taking
Yeah.
like a mounted hero, say Hairdread, and you're taking probably like 2 Royal Guard on horse. So you're probably not taking just a couple of Riders of Rohan. Like you say, you'd be taking it in a Riders of Theoden list, for example, where you can skirmish with it like more.
I haven't.
Have
What
you
is
included-
interesting, I haven't seen a Rohan skirmish list for a really long time. There was a guy called Zach who used to play at the Haven't Wargaming Club who would take like a pure Riders of Rohan list and just skirmish for ages, shoot the hell out of your opponent, and then charge in like after he estimated you shooting. But I haven't seen that at a GBET Joe event for. I can't remember the last time actually.
So,
There's a
Ivan
couple
Sheehan
people who do
plays Riders of Theoden, and he often includes quite a heavy, like he doesn't go for the pure heavy cav with heroes. He does do heavy hero, but he also brings at larger points. He tends to take a larger number of Riders of Rohan. Partly because I think he only has 3 mattered Royal Guard models because they are literally the most expensive thing in the entire universe.
Indeed.
So I understand that decision is maybe not necessarily a gameplay one, but still, like, you can make them work. I think their biggest problem is they sit next to they sit directly in between cost wise 2 other profiles that are both of the halves of the Rider of Rohan, but arguably better. So if the Rohan Outrider on horse is 13 points, and that's a better archer. And then you've got the Royal Guard on horse, which is 15 points, which is a better heavy cavalry choice.
Yeah.
You've got one in the middle. Literally has one more defense and a bow, but a worse shoot value. It's
I
literally a
think
pure spectrum.
That would mean that this model is precisely nervous. Slap bang in the middle of where you want to be.
Seems like a nervous.
It's not,
we
it's not
can
good.
revisit
It's
all
not
the
bad.
Um,
It's just there.
Question for you, Dave. Can Outriders take axes?
No, they have to pay for them.
So there is an argument there.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's one of the main things that's good about them is they come with a choice of an axe or a sword. So you're like, well, I'll have an axe, please, and then you can get strength 5 on the charge. So they're great to combine with heroes and stuff for a little bit of extra chop, and they can have 100% bows. Especially, you sometimes see this in like weird like Denethor, Trebuchet, some tin cans, and then a contingent of Riders of Rohan with Theodred or something just to get a lot of extra bows. Like you can do some clever things with them, but the profile itself, I think, is really completely propped up to the fact that they don't count towards the bow limit. Like I think that's the main reason why you'd use them.
Yeah, they'd be interesting with Lothlorien as well, I think, maybe.
Definitely their unique selling point, isn't it?
But
yeah, it's all about maxing out your bows if you're using them. For me,
they'd also be really interesting with Erkenbrand and Éomer and Gandalf the White in that legion.
Yeah, the problem with that legion is it's complete trash.
And they're the only option, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're the only option. Yeah.
The fact
it's
that
like, hey, you like shit profiles? We got all of them in this one legion. Whoa!
The fact that for 14 points you get an axe, a shield, and a bow is pretty It's not a kit there.
Yeah, I mean, like it's not worthless. Like I think they're sort of the problem they have is we'll see this, and there's a couple I can see on there that are also going to have this problem is that they're too middle of the road. They don't do any one thing good enough.
They don't excel
like-
in any one particular area. Yeah.
The one thing they have that's completely unique is the bow limit thing, and that is genuinely the reason you take them, which is why you'd never ever take them in either Theodred's Guard or a Helm's Guard, because it's like if you don't get the 100% bow limit thing, they're literally not worth taking.
Yeah, it's not.
You might as well take an Outrider instead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. I think that's going to do it for the Ride of Rohan. We will move on to the Haradrim Raider.
Love these guys.
Oh,
These
this is
are-
one that I like.
Yes. But in a vacuum, you know, for its list and what it can bring. What do we think?
So
So, hey, go on, I might let you start.
It's
No,
like
no, you go ahead, you go
who's
ahead.
the more Chad Witch King Suladan player right now?
just
I'm
out of
currently
pure
eating my dinner.
dedication.
Ash isn't
I've got to
ready
give it
to.
her. Oh, if he's eating his dinner,
I've got a
Um,
huge slab of pizza here, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll
this is
tuck
the
away.
cheapest Lance Cav in the game. That's the starting point.
12
12 points for it with just the War Spear. Even though it's fight 3, the bow tech option in a list where you can get a lot of bows, especially in pure Harad, these things are great for skirmishing. You can have your bow armed, poison bow no less as well.
Yeah.
Bow armed models that also have a lance for charging in. Even though they fight 3, like one of these fighting a single guy defending an objective, even if they have a fight value advantage, you're like, well, if I win,
Yeah,
I've got my 2 dice, and if I win, I'm going to knock you prone, and I've got a lance, 4 strikes. It's like, their hitting power is good, and they're extremely cheap. They hit like a Rivendell Knight if they win combat, and they cost about half the amount.
13 points with a bow. Like, it's literally like points less. Like, it's crazy.
Like they're similar to Serpent Riders on that price point. And obviously, Serpent Riders have the fight 4, which is actually quite a valuable step up. But at the same time, I personally really rate the bow on like little skirmishes.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing is, because of the 50% bow limit, if you're having like a Mordor Suladan moment or something, you can have like four cav, you can have 2 Serpent Riders, 2 Harad Raiders with bow and spear, and you've got everything you want. And that altogether will cost you less than like 200 points.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
That's what you were doing, Ash, for quite a while, but I noticed lately you've stopped running Raiders. What's the thought there?
I've always found that I can get the shooting with orc trackers instead, but I can definitely see value in what Dave's saying. They're just really good, cheap profiles, and the difference between fight 3 and fight 4, I'm going to say it doesn't really matter now, but then specifically in the context of the Lance Cavalry, because it's not going to win a charge against a single model and die, because if you're being charged by this thing, you're going to shield, because if you lose, you get knocked over and instantly die. So on the charge, it doesn't really matter what fight value you are. Again, in certain situations, if you are playing a fight 4 army and the person shields and rolls a 6 and then shields and rolls a 6, you are going to be slightly miffed. So
I think for me, I think they're pretty much exactly the same value as Serpent Riders overall. If you factor in, if you took an average of 20 games and you normalized the value you get of the fight 4 versus the bow, I think you'd come out almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear that there's no right or wrong answer.
Well, I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. Adam,
What do you think, Adam?
As the person who invented the Witch King Saladin list down the bottom there, Adam.
Yeah, but my one had Fell Beast in it, so it never really took off, literally.
Not quite.
I actually quite like the bow and spear option on them. For 14 points, I think it's
13.
Great.
13.
Sorry, 13 points even. Yeah, it's just. So I've been taking a bit of Lothlorien, and we'll come to this later. But when you take the Lothlorien Cav, which has similar war gear, just no lance, so you're taking the bow, you're taking all the gear, right?
Yeah.
You get so much with the Haradrim Raider, so long as you're not being shot at. But even if you are being shot at, it's only 1 pip of the dice different.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like, being 13 points just makes them really good. Like, honestly, these things are. I'd almost be tempted to say lemon, frankly. Like, I think from pure value, they're so hard to beat. Like, the only profile that comes to is actually better than them for value, I think, on this probably is the Warg Rider. I don't know. I think for me, I think they have to be either top of City Nervous or Lemon. And the reason I think Lemon is because I can't really think of more than a couple of profiles that would really be better than
Go
them.
above it. Yeah, I kind of did a test sort of play, and I had it at the top of Silly Nervous. But there was a lot of things in Silly Nervous.
I guess, I mean, you explained earlier, Farmer, that you think these over 20 games would be exactly 50-50. So if you were pushed and you had to choose one to only take either the Raider or the Serpent Rider, could you choose?
I think they are effectively exactly the same from a list building perspective. The only reason I don't take more Serpent Riders, though, caveat is I don't have any painted ones. This is the only Serpent Rider I have, and he is not painted.
Yeah,
he is unpainted.
He just happens to be on my desk.
I mean, this does contradict what I said earlier, but I do think that just that 1 point for Fight 4 has made differences in my game to make them Lemon, whereas the bow doesn't quite push it up to Lemon for me because you can. Well, it's just more inconsistent, I would say.
I'd almost say that, like, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'd almost say that, like, a pure lance or a pure spear Raider for 12 points is like absurdly good value as well. But
yeah,
if I honestly, I'd say they're the same level. I would be happy to say the Serpent Rider is literally the pip in front of them, but I think they're the same level personally.
I think we'll leave it top of Silly Nervous, and then we'll see where we go.
We'll see where it goes.
We'll revisit at the end. Okay, we're going to move on to the Mirkwood Cavalry. Halls of Thranduil. Where's James? Oh,
I think. Is this the best
I really like these. No,
because it's so cheap compared to the other two.
The cheapness is the thing. Knights, I think, it depends how high you value doing everything extremely well. Knights need more support than these guys. If you're going to drop 1 or 2 models in, these guys are amazing. But they don't blow any spare points on, like, obviously Fleetfoot is great, but if you're going to cost it like 2 points, you'd say no, I'm good. No armored horse wasting money on that. They get the expert rider, which is the important thing, which means that they can pick up objects off the floor without having to dismount, which is huge. The cavalry.
Like, I do understand the whole the Halls of Thranduil kind of synergy is meant to be Thranduil gives the list buffs in general to all of the troops.
However,
which is fine, but to a cavalry model, it's just not something that is going to synergize, because 9 times out of 10 you want the cavalry to go places where the rest of your army probably isn't.
They do get a 6-inch banner from Thranduil, though.
That's what I mean. Yeah, and it's like
I would consider
the rule that you're paying for. Is...
So I would counter that with saying that yes, it's
some hoodlums are driving outside Adam's house. You must go sort them out.
That's been an intro clip.
That's probably the French celebrating their narrow own goal win there.
Escape.
Indeed. I would counter that with saying that, they get +1 to wound if they're within 3 inches of Thranduil, right? But they get 6-inch banner, like as in they count as being within a banner if they're 6 inches away from Thranduil. Yeah?
Yeah.
So I would counter that with thinking, well, the whole purpose of cavalry is probably just to hold off, and eventually kind of collapse in, right? Unless you're going for an objective, if you're trying to hit. So I think their best value is actually coming back around once the lines are locked. If you can come in and take off a spear support within 6 inches of Thranduil, they become quite killy cav.
Yeah.
With 3 attacks essentially there to win the fight at 5-5.
Yeah, I think that like they can fill that role. Like there are situations, where you can make it work. I just guess I'm looking at like the majority of situations where the reason why you have a cav there is usually to do things that your infantry can't do. And then if you're, by going to get objectives or, doing moving cav around the board, and if you're then paying points for that rule, and probably more often than not, you're not going to get the value out of it. It's, I'd say that there are situations, but
I would counter that by saying that they basically don't pay for the rule. Like they are 17 points with a shield. That's really cheap for elf cavalry. Like they're 4 points cheaper than a geared out Calathrim knight.
Yeah, it's a good place.
Yeah.
like they're basically not paying any points for any of their rules, which is they're just basically paying for the fact that they're a Courage 5 Fight 5 cavalry with no extra frills. Although they do also have a hand and a half sword if they want to get it crazy.
I guess
So
those
compared
things
to
are the headline.
Galathrim Knights,
Yeah.
ignore the bow option because that's not an option for both.
Mhm.
The Galathrim Knight comes in at 19 points with shield, and these guys come in at 17.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're paying a point for an armored horse and Fleetfoot essentially.
So you're paying those 2 points for those extra little rules, which, I mean, Fleetfoot is handy, but you're then not paying at all for the rules like you just said. So I
Yeah.
think these guys are incredible value.
Yeah.
These guys I see mostly as if you're doing an alliance list with Battle of Five Armies type vibes, but you're taking a Legolas or something, or even a Thranduil, these guys are like really good value cavalry. I think you can have like 3 of these where you might only be able to have 2 of the other kinds of elf cavalry, and that can make the difference.
And I'd say in the context of the list, something like Halls of Thranduil was probably the most allied kind of elf.
Yes,
faction,
that was the
along
point
the
I was going to bring up.
that you
Is the
see.
fact
So
that
it can be
the
added.
Legolas
Yeah.
on horse with 2 or 3 of these cavalry on horse give you such a powerful elven cavalry contingent that you can ally in to basically any good list because Legolas is valor. I would be comfortable putting these in Silly Nervous below the Haradrim Raider.
For me, I think these feel like bottom of Silly Nervous because like they are great, but they're also not. They don't do anything unique or special. They're literally just it's 5/5 and it's good value. And value is never going to be as exciting as power, is it? Let's be real.
Yeah, then
No.
like extra bells and whistles. Yeah, I think I'm sort of happy with
Which
that.
is
Somewhere around the mid.
speaking of extra bells and whistles, I see what's next.
Yes. Well, let's move on then to the Carndish Horseman. Interesting one here. Shout out Sam Grattan.
Why don't all of these
Winner
models have banners?
of
What's
Hero
that
Blend.
about?
I know.
Where is the? Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. No, I was looking for something. These guys are again carried by their special rule with bow limit. At the end of the day, they're just. This is an example of like if you could swap the lance on a Serpent Rider for a bow, would you do it?
No.
If you could have pure bows, because these guys are fight 4, D4, 13 points. Or are they 14 points? I can't remember. I think they might be the same as a Rider of Rohan.
They are 13.
So I'm pretty sure they're kind of like the evil counterpart to the Rider of Rohan with all the same sort of stuff, except being one better fight value.
Well, and no shield, which makes a big difference in a mirror match.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
However, I still want to put them in nervous tier next to the Rider of Rohan.
I think they are very equivalent to the Rider of Rohan in the sense that the problem they have is they don't have any nice alliances. They don't have any nice legendary legions. Their hero choices are non-existent. They're basically a meme tier list that work in very specific circumstances. And power to people who make them work, but they are like they're like effective in a very specific way, and that means that I just can't rate them too highly overall compared to something else.
Sam just skipped the whole way through this pod to this point, and he is fuming right now at your analysis.
They necessarily enable the dope ass list that he uses, which is with the chariot spam. Like I love that list. I think it's hilarious and really fun. They are like the necessary thing that enables the chariots to do their thing. Like when Jakob played this at 600 in the D4 meta, you have 20 bows, you skirmish, and then you have your chariots run stuff over and kill it 75% of the time.
Against those fuckers that all took Narzug and Hunter Orcs, eh?
Exactly.
Some people. Yeah. There was like what, 12 of them? 13?
Meta chasers.
I mean, I still think they're nervous though. They're not dog tier.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying they're bad. Like they're definitely not dog tier. There is some dog tier cav in there. I think they're worse than the Rider of Rohan though.
I would say that as well. Yeah.
Because the Rider of Rohan has more overall applications.
Yeah. Adam, happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll leave it there. We will move on to the Knight.
I will say that I like that they're viable, by the way. I like that they are technically viable. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
As Sam proved, if you haven't watched our Hero of Lemon tournament series, you might want to mute the podcast. But Sam did win the Hero of Lemon tournament with Can't. So you can do
I
it.
can't believe it.
You know.
It's insane. Killing D4 models, who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Well, we will move on to the Knight of Minas Tirith. Another staple here. We could have started with this one.
Oh,
This is an OG. Another
See,
lance
they're
cav.
just- they are nice. They are
Yeah.
nice.
They are actually surprisingly cheap for what they are, I always think.
Yeah.
Like
Yep,
on the
decent.
one hand, like they're kind of uninspiring because the real fact is Minas Tirith itself is just uninspiring. You put this in a different list that has more tools going for it,
Yeah,
it suddenly looks a little bit nicer.
Mm.
But because it's in a list full of uninspiring pieces, it feels a bit more uninspiring. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, you're definitely right, because it is, I think, actually a very good cavalry profile.
I do
you
like the
just think,
models as well. Honestly, I do.
People
so
almost
Knight of Minas
never
Tirith.
take them without shield as well. Taking them without shield is a more viable option than it seems, because then they're literally the same points as a Serpent Rider, and you're swapping a fight value for a defense, which isn't a great trade because you also lose the poison. But at the same time, like, it's not outrageous to think that that's a decent trade. And then obviously going to fight to D6 is always a good thing because it means you're less likely to die to random
Shenanigans.
losing one fight to a strength 3 model kind of thing.
Losing one fight to a tracker that you've charged.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
the thing that these guys have that, say, the D4 Haradrim that you just named don't have is when you're fighting the Haradrim, you always go for the man. But when you fight something that's D5, D6, especially D6, there's an actual choice. So that can mess with people, you know, when they roll that 6 to wound the horse and they're like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, Adam.
Underrated aspect of Suladan is being the same defense as his horse means that people are less likely to take his horse away because they think, well, maybe I'll get wounded on Sully instead.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Don't reveal all of our tricks, Farmer. Come on.
Sorry, that's my bad.
I was going to start wounding Sully.
I think again, pairing these with Boz and his banner to get fight 4 Cav.
Yep, to fight
now
4.
you're talking of something pretty juicy.
But then you come back to the same problem though, which we were just talking about with the tools Cav, is that you don't really want them doing that.
Yeah.
Being near Boromir, you want them off fighting for objectives or running off the board and such.
I know, it's hard, isn't it? I think overall, they're probably, I want to say, better than the Rider of Rohan.
I would also agree with that.
Still,
I think they're definitely nervous.
Yeah,
I'm inclined to actually split them. I think they're worse than the Rider of Rohan, but they're better than the Candish Horseman. But like that's just splitting hairs, really. I'd hear arguments either way.
What do you think, Adam?
Adam gets the final vote. If not, we have to roll a dice.
He thinks better. We are in a slightly awkward position this evening because there's 4 of us. So if we get a tie, we're gonna have to roll a dice. A Danny.
Okay, so Farmer, here we go. You were singing the praises of the Warg Rider a second ago.
Yes, indeed.
It's the best troop cavalry in the game for what it does.
Can't wait to hear why.
11 points, strength 4, can split off from its mount, access to 1 point throwing spears. Just phenomenal value. Unbelievably good value. Like, Morgul Knights literally never get played just because the Warg Riders exist. Like, Morgul Knight's profile is okay, it's fine, it has a lot of things going for it, but it's like, Warg Riders are just so much better.
They're so cheap. They're just so cheap.
They're amazing for their points.
I never take them. I always take a Serpent Rider instead.
Yeah, you know why that is?
Why?
Because your Mordor section is entirely built around your battle line, and you have access to, like, you want to take stuff for Suladan, and you don't want to reduce the size of your battle line to take your cav in your main warbands. So the Suladan warband, you don't want to fill it up with Harad warriors that's going to make your line weaker.
Yeah.
You keep your line as strong as possible. You have trackers because trackers are amazing value unrelatedly as infantry, and then you take the lance cav because the lance cav is also great. For my money, like, Warg Riders are amazing, but like slightly higher courage can also be good as well.
So for the difference between the Serpent Rider and the Warg is you get an extra 5 value on a lance and an extra courage for 2 points.
2 points.
So
yeah,
I think that 2 points personally makes them slightly better. But for being 11 points, they are fantastic.
Yeah,
They
I
are
mean,
fantastic utility cav. They've probably got to be our first lemon
12
in
points.
context
12
choice.
points for either with a shield or throwing spears,
Or
or
throwing
13
spear.
with
Yeah.
all the tricks is it's just really good. Like throwing spears for the things that cavalry end up doing, throwing spears are unbelievably good because cavalry spend all their time charging guys holding objectives. So if you're fighting if you're using your warg rider against an orc tracker, you're saying that you might randomly die to an orc tracker with your cav. Well, this
You
time
may
you have a
randomly
1
die
in
to a
6
throwing spear.
Well, you have a 1 in 6 shot of that orc tracker not even being there to have the fight before you do it.
Yeah.
You then have the chance that if he does kill you, your warg sticks around and can have another go. Like there's just so many more things
Yeah.
you can do. It's great for objectives. It's great for recon. just really good.
Specifically for the dismount and warg staying capability.
Very good.
This is a lemon
I
cavalry.
think it's lemon.
Yeah, and it's
because of
it's the only troop cav that can do that. Like, well, actually, it's
all
not.
the
But
sort of
the
stuff
other,
that
amusingly, the other warg riding cav troop is dog shit.
It's
So.
terrible. Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely lemon. Adam, final
Yeah.
thought from you on this one before we move on?
They're just bread and butter of any evil list, really, that has orcs.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Really, really good.
Exactly.
You always take one or two. Yeah.
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 On
So-
that, then we will
Can I
move.
quickly make a point about
Oh,
different
yeah.
kinds of cav as well? Something I've realized we haven't actually mentioned yet is most of the time, cavalry is a smattering. It's not, you don't like cavalry as in the context of cavalry armies is quite different to cavalry in the context of regular armies.
Yeah.
Which is why I think the Rider of Rohan and the Candish Warrior, Candish Rider are going to end up feeling a little bit maybe hard to
done by.
place because they don't ever get used in mixed force armies, whereas the rest of them we're ranking with that context, probably because that's the kind of armies that we mostly play.
Yes. Yeah, that is ultimately like the context that we would write lists in, right, and play the game by.
Yeah, but I think all of those factors play into how good a cavalry model is overall. Because a model like the Mirkwood Cav can be played in a lot of different contexts and is also points for points very good. Whereas the Rider of Rohan and the Cardish Horseman, even though they're points for points just as kind of good, they've got less viability to use, which makes them overall less good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We will move on then from the Warg Rider to the Knight of Dol Amroth. One of my personal favorites on this list in terms of just like the models. I love them. I have 12 of them.
These guys are hard done by. They're just too expensive.
So
they're very cool though.
20 points all in, including their armored horse and their lance.
20 points. Wow.
They are 20 points, yeah, which is 2 less than a Rift Knight.
It's crazy.
They in the fiefdoms list, basically you'll never see these without Imrahil.
Yeah.
And that does give them something of a double purpose in that you can either use them to attack objectives and they sort of do everything where they're 5/4 and they have a lance and they're D6 and they have the Imrahil's 12-inch banner keeps them a bit more reliable because you can actually still be in a 12-inch banner quite easily.
I think that's sort
even
of the
while
thing.
Imrahil.
Yeah.
And then they can also come back with Imrahil and get access to fight 5, so they can act as a bit of a line breaker. You can fight some Black Numenorians or something and be like, well, actually, this guy is a pseudo hero when he's next to Imrahil, give you a little bit more oomph.
Yeah.
But the 20 points.
It's quite a scary place to be committing 20-point models to like the battle line, and then you lose a couple of fights, and once they start to die, like your list is really kind of going down in points quite quickly.
I would pretty much never take more than 2 of these, and probably only one.
Yeah,
like at 800 points, I might have a second one.
Yeah, but that's kind of it.
I just agree with Elliot what you said. How cool they are because I've had these are one of my first box sets of models that I bought.
Really,
and they're so cool. But in this edition, just being 20 points, the fight 5 only being within 3 inches of Imrahil, they're just so expensive. So expensive when they're only strength 3, and you have a look for example, a Knight of Minas Tirith within 6 inches of Boromir, and usually Boromir is going to be in most Minas Tirith lists. just the 6 points difference is pretty huge for
it's
effectively the
huge.
same thing.
Yeah.
I think they are probably dog, but I think they work fine in a pure list. But if you're being honest, like they are maybe the very bottom of nervous. It depends how
Nah,
spread
Farmer.
out you want to go.
They're dog. They are dog cav. You can't
I
ally
felt
them
afraid
anywhere.
to cast the Knight of Dol Amroth into the.
Yeah, because they're just so
I
cool.
wanna- I want to put on record. I have used these and done well at tournaments with them.
Okay.
But it'll only ever be like 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
You can't ally them in anywhere. They're overpointed.
If you're allying them, both of the things that you ever ally fiefdoms with already have better cab options. You got Royal Guard or Knights of Minas Tirith are available and cheaper, and it's like, whoops.
Yeah. Adam, where do you think these should go?
So compare them to Morgul Knights. They don't cause terror. They're more expensive, and they can get to fight 5, right?
Yeah, within 3.
Yeah, they can get to
But
fight 6.
They're 2 points more.
You have, yeah.
No,
I had fun doing that with the Boromir Imrahil.
Yeah,
they're just not good enough. But something that none of us have mentioned. One of the main purposes of cavalry we actually haven't discussed, which is obviously for going for objectives and just being that model that your army needs. So if you really want to take a pure Dol Amroth army, if you really want to take a pure Lothlorien army, you will end up taking units that are subpar, suboptimal, just because they fill what they're asked to do.
Yeah, you need to
just
take
doing the
them.
job.
Yeah.
Or basically.
So they will always be necessary, but I think they're definitely dog.
I think if you two are advocating for dog, then I'm not against that, I must say. So
I was. They won't be alone in dog. I'll say that.
let's occupy dog with the Knight of Dol Amroth. Then let's leave them there. Okay, we will move on then to, as Adam mentioned, the Morgul Knights. Then
I love these guys.
These are cool.
I don't think I've
They're
ever
going to be
played
nervous
against Morgul Knight ever because of the Wild Rider.
So I ran a very specific list where I used them.
Right.
When I used to take Witch King, Gurit, Kamal and Fellbeast, and Gorbag, just as a laugh at 800. And I'd take 2 of these guys to accompany Kamal, because when you've got Harbinger and you have a Fellbeast that's not your leader, that Fellbeast might get in situations where it needs a little bit of backup. And these guys are the perfect backup because they cause terror. They're fight 4, they're pretty solid. The defense 6, like they're tanky. But like Dave said earlier, I just think they're unlucky to be in the same list as the Warg Rider and the Orc Tracker on Warg.
I have used these, and they are genuinely good models because they're always going to be paired with Harbinger. And when your biggest, punch is the lance charging at fight 4, when you're failing to countercharge these, that's really, really good. They're just too expensive for an evil list. I mean, shout out Jenny Wiggins. Let's go. He always gets a shout out. I played him once where he used the Dark Marshal and loads of these boys. And it was actually quite annoying because you just can't charge any of the cav and then they countercharge you. And, it's good fun, but they're going to be nervous, I think, unfortunately.
Like you see that list semi-frequently when people want to try something, and it's never very good. Or at least it has a little bit of tech, but it will get pounded by any strong meta list.
Yeah.
Effortlessly. Yeah. And so the problem Morgul Knights have is Mordor is an unbelievably efficient list, and it's like, how can you justify having cavalry that costs the same as a Black Numenorian and a Morannon? And the answer is you just can't. The problem with Mordor is it's not that they're bad, it's that it's a list that's full of extremely efficient profiles, and if you're not min-maxing, then what are you even doing?
Yeah, as soon as you start sprinkling in inefficiencies in places here and there, it adds up quite quickly, I think.
Like,
Final
if
point,
you take them out of that list and put them in a different one, they're much better.
Yeah.
They just don't synergize well enough. with Mordor in general, and obviously you want to outnumber your opponent to get those good bonuses. They're not going to help it being 18
They're
points.
the kind of
It's
profile.
18 points is very expensive.
They're the kind of profile that Ali would really earnestly argue for, and that's how you know that they're not that great.
They're not that good.
But it's like it's the kind of thing where he looks at them and thinks like, I can see how that's good, and then just decides he wants to make them seem more viable than they actually are.
He does love that. Yeah.
He does love that, and that's fair. It's just that's a good barometer for something.
How
being
you know?
bad.
Yeah. So whereabouts in Nervous do we think?
Bottom
I
of
think
Nervous.
right at the bottom.
Bottom of Nervous.
Yeah, right at the bottom.
Of everything in Nervous at the end of this,
Yeah.
I suspect.
Okay. Right then, we will leave it there, and we will move on to the Dunlending Horsemen.
Cool.
We looked at this one recently in a Lord of the Spins episode, which I assume would have gone up before this. I think. Yeah, and
Where is our man Vince?
it's a fight 3 cav with a terrible special rule.
I think they're fine. The problem is they
Yeah.
only exist in a terrible legendary legion, and B, a list that is great and already has Warg Raiders for the same points.
And
It's
lives
just it's a
alongside,
shit place to be for a list like this.
and it lives alongside Crebain.
Exactly. Like you see these in the Dunlending.
I think they're going to be.
Legion,
No.
I would say these are maybe worse
like
than the Dunamroth Knight.
I think I want to say that they are probably about the same.
I'm not against that
Worse
either.
because
No,
overall
I
they're
don't
weaker.
I think they're better than the Don Amroth Knight because these guys can get to strength 4. They're much cheaper.
Strength 5.
They are strength 4.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Exactly, they can get to strength 5. They're much cheaper. And also, don't they have like a reroll ones against mounts or something?
The reroll
Yeah,
wants
it's
to
just-
wound against mounts, which
it's-
I think is just terrible. I mean, for 12 points, like it's not
It's a free rule, isn't it? They're not paying
bad.
anything.
Yeah.
It's a janky rule because I mean, like, when do you want a cavalry on cavalry special rule when you have a fight 3 model?
It just feels pointless. But the fact that you're getting for 12 points, you're getting strength 4 D5 with an axe, like
Also,
that's
It's the
pretty good.
farmer. I'll tell you when. It's when you countercharge to stop people who are out combating so easily.
Yeah.
It's an anti-hero rule, really. But this
Yeah,
list also
but-
has Frida Tallspear in it, who does that, but a lot better.
It's very niche.
Although
Adam's vociferous defense has swayed me. Put them at the top of dog instead.
They shoot up the
Dog.
rankings. The power
Whoa.
rankings.
It's funny to say that they're so like because they are actually quite cheap for Cav.
They are cheap. Yeah. 12
But in
points.
the
I
context of
just-
where you choose cavalry, they're just terrible.
Yes. Yeah, they're not
The
great.
problem is they're just in shit lists and are competing with better profiles. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's what knocks them down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Crebain.
they're only usable in the Dunlending Legendary Legion, and that legion is not good. So I don't think that's a good defense.
It's not good. Although Ali would argue otherwise, but we will move
Well,
on.
Ali's an idiot. Yeah.
We will move on to a profile that Ali, I'm sure, would advocate highly for, which is the Iron Hill
this
Goat Rider.
profile irritates me so much. They should be D7. Why don't they have a shield? They're dwarfs on goats. Justice for these fellas because they need to be better.
I think the reason is because D7 Cavalry seems pretty nutty. I think that's probably why.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're dwarfs though.
Yeah, I mean, put them up 2 points. These guys are undercosted, I think.
A free hand. There's a hand there.
You think they're undercosted?
Yeah. Heavy Cav, fight 4. The goat special rule is actually unbelievably good. Lance, strength
The goat
4.
special is
Cavalry.
really irritating.
Nothing else on this list. Well, actually, that's not true. Actually, one of the models on this list has that, but is also quite expensive. Fight 4, strength 4, Lance, troop Cav, D6.
D5 Goat as well.
Mount as well. I mean, yeah, movement 8 is some shit, but that knockdown rule is really good, especially if you're against infantry heroes. You have a 1 in 3 chance that their hero literally can't even fight back.
Can't carry you. Yeah. I
Nasty.
think it's the move 8, which ultimately is why they've put the points down, I guess. But if you're playing for, trying to
Move
get
8 is considerably stinky.
but you can sort of plan for it. Like if you know you have to get somewhere in X amount of turns, like you can plan for it. So I think that's probably the thinking.
Like they are basically the only thing that they're actually missing is Ashes is a shield, so that when they dismount, they can shield on objectives and be annoying and stuff. Like 2 of these in an Erebor Reclaimed or in our Pure Iron Hills or something is just beastly. The reason you don't see them more is quite often Iron Hills and Erebor and stuff are allied, and the allies, people tend to prefer the Elf Cav because it's a bit cheaper sometimes.
Yeah. And the move 10. I mean, if you're ultimately looking for 1 or 2 cav, I mean, you
mobility
would usually want the more mobility. So
these things are actually really tough, though, surprisingly tough.
So I've taken these guys a few times, and
Yeah.
the reason why I don't defend them like Farmer Maggot is because they are the soft underbelly of a really tough list. So when you take a list that is consistently good at one thing, which is surviving, and then you just offer your opponent this little nugget, you go, look at these guys, they defend 6. Oh my god, don't go for these guys, despite the fact they're going to win me the objectives and they're going to win me the game, and they're the most killer units in my army, apart from Dane and Thorin and Dwalin and Bifur and whatever. You are literally showing the opponent, okay, yeah, you want to hide them, but with move 8, you're not going to be able to move them that much and hide them sufficiently, and then also hide them whilst wanting to do something with them later on. So they suffer this idea of they are the fish that are not swimming with the rest of the fish when there's a shark coming, and they just get picked out.
That was great
analogy.
That was great.
I think that is a valid point. There is something to be said for making the most appealing target in your army one of the more important tech pieces in your army. But what I would also say is that's kind of how it is with Serpent Riders as well, and that doesn't stop them.
True, but
Having said that, you do make a good point.
Yeah, they're cheaper. Yeah.
I like that point, and that's kind of that links back to my initial statement of they just should be D7 because they've got a free hand, they've got space for that shield. Besides the point, comment below if you think that Goat Rider should be D7.
They're hanging on to the goat. They
don't need to hang on. They've got strong dwarf legs. They can hold on.
I think they could go up by a point or 2 and have a shields and shield wall. I think that would be fine. Also, then they wouldn't be that really annoying thing where you have to try and find some Iron Hills draws without shields that don't exist to be the dismounts.
Yeah.
All in all, definitely sitting nervous, Cav.
Yeah. Nervous.
Top of nervous.
I'm actually feeling more swayed to the top of nervous because I actually think that the thing that their strength 4 lance is amazing, but then they're also in a list where strength 4 isn't a problem. Like in a vacuum, their stat line is amazing, but actually they're sort of a bit less impressive. They're less than the sum of their parts almost.
Sorry, you'll just have to let me grab my farmed.
You see, I was gonna think about putting him in nervous, and then your argument, Farmer, swung me up to silly nervous.
Did it?
So I'm thinking, I was
going to. We had 2 for silly nervous and 2 for nervous, so I was going to roll.
So I think they're just below the Mirkwood Cav.
Yeah, silly. I think so as well. I like silly nervous, but then nervous.
When you put it that way, they are pretty comparable to the Mirkwood Cav. I think bottom of silly nervous is probably okay overall.
Okay, if we're fine with that. That's a big one. Yeah, I like them up there. I think they fit. Okay, we'll leave it there. We will move on to a terrible Cav, which is the Hunter Orc on Warren.
Yeah.
This is the.
I'm gonna say, this is our first James Goble.
I think this is James Goble. This is complete dog shit.
This is a model that gets worse when you mount it. The sum of its parts are so much better.
That gets worse and literally double the cost when you mount it.
This guy's so
yeah. So this model is a baffling profile because Hunter Orcs, as we all know, 8 points. They have the many blade special rule, which works only when they're on foot, which gives them a second attack, which is an incredibly good value for a strength 4 model. And then you pay 8 points to mount them on a Felwarg, which is it's not the most, but it's one of the most expensive troop price up for being mounted in the game. There is also very little consistency with that, by the way, which is one of the reasons why some troop cav are weirdly priced.
I feel like that topic may occur again, Farmer, when we go talk about the Arnold cav.
Well, it can also come into the all of these. I mean, the Royal Guard, the Outrider, the Tracker, the Citadel Guard, and the Light of Delamroth can all be taken on foot and have literal upgrades that are not consistent with each other at all. So that's an issue. But yeah, this is just 8 points to go on get mounted, and then they essentially lose the value of the mini blade special rule. So even the fact that Felwargs are literally the best mount in the game, pretty much, there isn't a unique one. You know, cavalry charging without needing line of sight is excellent, but for 16 points, D4 is just suddenly shit.
Yeah, 16 is crazy. There is one sort of use. I mean, let's say you have 8 points left in a list and your max warband space. You can pay the 8 points for the warg and then just mount. But the warg might run away.
I mean,
it's the way you can spend the points and potentially get an extra model in there. But
yeah, it's not worthless having a model that can give knockdown that isn't one of your heroes. But in a list that has 3 cheap, very, very points effective heroes that can do that for you, and no less access to movement 10 models for, again, half the cost. Like the fact that they can basically the fact that you can take Felwargs without Hunter Orcs for the same cost as the upgrade completely is the nail in the coffin for these things.
Yes, agreed.
Like if they were 6 points upgrade, you might see them sometimes.
Yeah, it'd be different. Yeah, and that would be interesting. It would add some variety potentially. But yeah, I think the Hunter Orc on Warg, a pretty convincing James Goebel cavalry model. Okay,
this will be the worst one by far.
Yeah. So we will move on then to the Easterling Cataphract, which I'm sure a couple years ago would have been maybe down in James Goebel. I didn't really play before too much then. I didn't know too much about Easterling.
Yeah, I think before the introduction of the Emperor, this would also be a James Goebel level
And now,
Cav. Yeah. But now, in the context of the mighty Dragon Emperor.
Yeah.
Not just the Emperor, but the Legion. Because these essentially you're talking about 3 different profiles. Well, 4 if you want to count the drum, but I almost think of the drum as a separate thing entirely because it's it's not relevant to the talk about the Cataphract. The Cataphract
it's not really relevant though,
drum,
is it?
But you can't talk about the drum when you talk about the Cataphracts because that is essentially a hero profile as we see from other lists. It just weirdly happens to be on a warrior.
They just lemon because they have access to the drum. I mean.
No. The reason I'm saying there's 3 different models is you've got Cataphracts, you've got Black Dragon Cataphracts, and you've got Black Dragon Cataphracts that are for free because it's the Emperor Legion. And they're all slightly different. Like Black Dragon Cataphracts are a bit expensive and not that great. Black Dragon Cataphracts for 14 points are really good.
Hell yeah.
Regular Cataphracts are shit because they're fight 3 and no lance.
Dog poo.
No strength 4. Like
I guess we have to look at it, I guess, like obviously the other versions are important, but I guess we're looking at them in their best possible use case. Like what is the maximum potential that you can get with them?
I don't think best possible use case in the context of the entire model.
But like you could have the best possible use case for the Hunter Orc on Warg and it's still James Goebel.
True.
I think that in its best possible form is like a dog upgrade with the Warg. I think in this case it's better than that. I think this comes up to
this becomes in its best possible case. It's probably another lemon.
No.
For 14 points.
No.
Really?
I think 15 points with an axe, and you're talking about its bottom of Silly Nervous probably.
Oh, I wouldn't agree with that. I think higher than that. Because more often than not, you're going to have them within the 12-inch banner. Obviously, yes, you might want them to run away to objectives, which obviously isn't where the Emperor is. So just if you're having a potential for a fight for D6 Cav, maybe with an axe within a 12-inch banner, or if you have them within 6, 5, 5.
So that version of it, best possible use case for me is still Silly Nervous, and it's not top of Silly Nervous either.
Well,
so that
again, we need to talk about it.
With the fact that's best use case.
Yeah.
Its best use case, I would think it's maybe up in lemon, but we're not talking about that.
Let's just look at the numbers. Right. Compare it to. Have we done the Serpent Rider yet? No, we haven't. But that will be Silly Nervous, right?
No way.
No,
okay.
Not on this podcast.
No way.
Spoilers. Okay, so the Cataphract, the Black Dragon Cataphract, which is inside the warband of the Dragon Knight or the Dragon Emperor, with axe swaps, is how many points more than the Serpent Rider?
15 points. 2 points more.
2 points more. So you're getting 1 higher fight.
Yeah. No. Well, within 6.
Same fight standard.
Yeah.
Within 6 of the Dragon Emperor.
Got the opportunity.
I mean, if we're taking this within context of the army, we've got to include that because it's like
the base. We don't because we weren't including that for the knight for Boromir, for example. Like
Oh
that's
yeah,
the
because
main
I guess that's right. Yeah, because we didn't say the knight is always going to be fight 4 because it's 6 and
account for within like you can allow for 50% of that effect, I would say, because it will
Yeah.
be
yeah,
but not
it's
always.
a potential
Fine. And allow for
Feather in the
what?
cap.
75% of the effect of it being within 12 inches of
Yeah.
the Emperor.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's very
So my
Yeah.
point is, you're paying 2 points for a model that's arguably one, maybe two fight value higher. Sorry, one fight value higher or the same.
Yeah.
Probably in banner range.
okay.
Serpent Rider might be as well. That's true. But also 2 higher defense, Gleaming Horde, 1 higher courage.
potential 2 higher courage with the army bonus as well.
Okay, so if you're broken, it gets better courage. That's a value, sure. If you're talking about Gleaming Horde, that rule is worthless, essentially. It's not
It's
completely
useful on the,
worthless.
on
It
the
does
Oh,
have
worthless.
model upwards.
Nice.
it has a niche, a very, very niche case. And if you're gonna go
It protects your
I'd say
drum.
versus a lance, sure, okay, versus a lance and a poison lance at that,
Yeah, you'd rather. Yeah.
for significantly cheaper in terms of percentage of total cost.
Yep, agreed.
Like it's not, 1 point is 1 point, but obviously, it's not. It's these are both cheap cabs, so being 2 points cheaper is like cheap for what it is versus very cheap for what it is.
Armored horse as well is lovely.
Armored horses, yeah, that's an interesting one because they essentially don't pay for it.
Very nice. Yeah.
These guys are
And the
courage
fact
4 base, right?
Black Dragon
No,
ones
they're
are,
courage.
yeah.
They're
Oh,
courage.
yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
think
main
that's
issue with the
upgrade.
Black Dragon upgrade being 2 points is you have to buy courage and fight value.
Yeah.
But
In-
if you've got the
in all of
Legion,
its
that's
parts,
free.
Yeah.
In all of its parts, it's either going to sit at the top of nervous or the bottom of silly nervous. So I think we just have a vote.
Definitely silly nervous.
I think it's probably silly nervous personally.
Silly nervous then.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean because the thing is that the Cataphract not having to buy the Black Dragon upgrade pushes it into just cheap enough territory that you can actually have a decent number of them, and they do a pretty good job of
Yes.
time breakers in
For
the
those
Legion.
points.
And we're accepting that outside of the Legion, it's not even really worth talking about them because no one would take them other
No,
than
we'll take
to
them
take a
anyway.
drum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The drum,
So
as
you-
I've said, I'm not counting the drum because it is essentially just a hero, but better because you don't have to
Yeah.
have a
Be
vulnerable
top
hero
11.
for
You
Fog of
know,
War.
yeah.
Fun point. Why didn't they let the Cataphract have a fate point, but they let the Orc Drummer have a fate point?
But that's
Huh?
exactly the point. That's why it's weird. It's like it's essentially not a Cataphract. It's essentially a 30-point Easterling hero who gets a horse for free.
Yeah, maybe because it's half the points than
Yeah.
the Orc Drum.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just a weird bit of inconsistency, and the only reason is because when they made the plastic Cataphract kit, they arbitrarily decided to put a musician in because of War of the Ring, and then
Yeah.
when they were writing the rules for drummers in
We
the
just
new
had-
version, they were like, "Well, it's a drummer, so how do we put that on a troop?
had to be
Is there a
done for
dismount? No, I don't know. Figure it out."
I made a dismount.
Conversion opportunity.
Yeah.
Conversion.
Um,
So, on
Opportunity
to-
two boxes.
yes, on to the Citadel Guard. Mounted Citadel Guard. What do we think? With the horse?
These guys are popular in
Ads.
Australia.
Very bad profile.
That's
they're
why they're
not
popular
great.
in Australia, Adam.
Yeah, Australia's
not
a
Shout out
great
Aussie.
fucking idiots.
Shout out only noobs and men.
We have some faithful Aussie listeners. Shout out to you guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're trying to start a culture war over on any heroic, so I've got to stick to the party line on that one. But they're rubbish.
You'd
They're-
lose the
they're
whip otherwise.
The main, yeah, exactly how the word, yeah. Running as an independent, that's me. Yeah, no, the thing is, the horse upgrade is 7 points, and Citadel Guard are already not good.
Hmm.
They're already
Yeah.
overshadowed.
If they had a
by
war
the big
spear,
bad guard.
if they had a war spear, they would be niche useful and probably sort of nervous. But without that, without their spear,
Hmm.
they are.
The only argument is that they're a bodyguard mounted unit. So, in some cases, that's going to be useful on objectives. But Minister's already got pretty good courage anyway.
I'm just looking as well, though. So if you pay the 7 points, so they're what, 16 points on a horse. But then if you wanted to give them a bow as well, you have to pay another point to
17
get
points.
rid of
Yeah.
the spear, which is useless on the horse. So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's because they essentially pay. It's like the Iron Hills crossbow upgrade. You're essentially paying 1 point, but also swapping. So it's essentially a 2-point upgrade for the longbow.
Yeah, so it's now 17
It's
points.
It's just a ball that does a lot of things not very well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
bodyguard
they're-
is nice on a cav. I'll give you that.
yeah. Where do we
I
think
think
it
they're the
slots in?
top of dog. They're
It seems
definitely
like
better
it's
than
going
the
at dog.
Dolamroth and Dunland and
Um,
Cav, I think.
I think they're the bottom of dog out of those three. I
Yeah.
actually think that you'd rather have any of them than Citadel Guard.
I think you'd rather take like the Knights of Dol Amroth in that list, but I guess when
Yeah.
you look at the points costs and the profiles kind of in vacuums.
Yeah.
God.
Well, I mean, think about this: the Knight of Dilemma's only 3 points more, and it gets a lance and D6 and the big banner
Yeah.
effect. And
When you put it
potentially-
like that, that's
yeah.
having a lance is
Yes.
fantastic. It
Yeah.
just a lot. Having a lance on a cavalry model makes it infinitely better. So sure, I'll concede that point.
I think the lack of lance literally cuts them in half.
Yeah.
What do you think, Adam? Are you happy with that?
I think there's an argument to take them with longbow and just scout around with Beragond, but it's reaching.
Yeah.
Beragond,
I'd say top of
Beragond,
dog.
yeah. Beragond alone has a place that these guys basically he does the thing that these guys would want to do. For 35 points, he actually has the 3+ shoot value. He's strength 4. You know,
And doesn't
like
he get his horse cheaper than these guys?
his horse is it's 5 points.
Really?
There's 7. Yes. It's like
That's a cheers, Beragond.
yeah,
Play
Beragond isn't exactly fantastic, but he's a better option than these guys. I think bottom of dog. I think they're just rubbish.
Well, on that note, I think we were in agreement. Bottom of dog. Yeah.
So,
No.
is James Goble going to see Spooky Town? Is he going to be scared tonight by what may
the
see
Rider of the Dead?
Ooh.
So spooky. This guy, this model is also pretty terrible. Let's be real.
The thing that this model does is it provides necessary mobility in a bad list. Technically, 2 bad lists.
But isn't that pretty good then?
I mean,
No.
it's essential because without it, that list would be terrible. But I mean, I don't know. The thing is, I don't even think you want to take many of these in the Armies of the Dead. I think numbers are your best bet. The one thing that list has going for it is D8 troops, and the more of them, the better. This is percentage over a regular troop wise. This is like a similar value upgrade to like a Warg Rider over a Morannon. So in that sense, they're actually fairly good value. If that makes sense. They also have D6 horses, which is kind of banging just randomly, and they can go over water, which horses can usually do anyway because not shallow water, but whatever. Like, yeah.
So in my MESBG infancy, when I first came back to the game, I saw these guys 24 points, and I thought, oh, I want some of those, and they sell them individually on Games Workshop, and I went, oh yeah, I'll go out and buy 4. I think I ever used 4 of them in a single game.
Let's go.
And I sold them all. That's like almost 100 points of Cav mod.
100 points.
They're going to be James Goble. They're probably better. They're probably better than the Hunter.
They have to be better than that.
I think they are. I think you're right on that, or they might be bottom of dog. But the funny thing about them is, if they were in a different good list, they'd actually be fucking dank.
Yeah, like the stat line is bad. They're courage 6, which obviously in the list.
Yeah, they have a lot of. This is the classic thing with Warriors of the Dead. They're actually technically great value because they've got really high stats, but then they just doesn't come together at all.
Yeah,
you need to be in fight 3. It's just the Army of the Dead being fight 3 really hurts them.
It's big poopy,
I don't know why they're fight 3 because in all the films they just
if they were fight 4, they would immediately get way better.
Yeah, way better.
They wouldn't be broken either if they were fight 4. They'd just be like, oh, hang on. Now
they might be non-trivial to deal with.
Yeah,
they'll be non-trivial.
Yeah. It looks like we'll leave them there. Adam, are you happy with them there?
I mean, the problem is they're just another expensive model and an expensive army. So.
Yeah.
It's like your basic. That's what I mean. Like your basic troops are 16 points. So it's like, I mean, they're good value compared to the terrible value regular troops, just total points wise.
Riders of the Dead with their points value to the Warriors of the Dead points value went, hold my beer.
Yeah,
Add on another.
but it's only 50% extra points, you know. It's just value.
It's I think we'll leave them there. They fit nicely down there. We will move on to the fantastic, the highly rated on this podcast, the Serpent Rider.
Down from James Goble, we were so low, and now we're going to go so high into that sweet,
Straight up.
citrusy lemon tier. I mean, I personally think they're better than the Warg Rider. But
I can't.
I mean, no. But to be fair, the dismount feature of the Warg Rider makes it better.
To
Thinking
be fair,
about it properly.
these guys are no slouch in dismounting. I think dismounting for a Fight Force spear support is actually low key quite good. The fact that War Spears
I have
is actually really good.
They've got to be in the lemon tier.
I
Marginally better than.
I want to advocate for them being on the same level as the Raider personally, but at the same time, like if you want to say they're lemon, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong. They're really, really good.
On his own podcast, he wouldn't dare deny Ashley.
But also,
you can't break my heart on a Monday night.
Got more tournaments with them than I have, so I'll let them have this one.
Oh, that's a big submission there from Mr. Farmer, Ashley.
Yeah, but I only use one list, so it's not hard, is it?
Well, exactly. But you've got a fair amount, 100 wins with it, so I'll give you the respect you deserve.
Well, yeah,
That's very kind.
Yeah.
Adam, to be fair, if you agree with Farmer, if Adam comes in here with a bullet train and says silly nervous, we could be in danger.
I think they're bottom of lemon.
Bottom of lemon.
Yeah,
I mean it's just edge up.
I think that's fair.
They're in a good place. Yeah,
great models as well.
We all know what they do. They were terrible to paint. I'm not gonna lie, I fucking hate it.
Really hard to paint.
I painted too. It's just any of the old metal models. I mean, most of them, I just have a really hard time painting.
I still like metal models over Citadel Finecast. That is the worst.
Finecast is bad.
They do chip pretty badly. Those the Serpent Riders because they got points all over and and you have to hold them by the pointy bits, so it just rubs off on your thumbs over time. That's what I know.
Yeah,
it's not good. But I think I'll go up into lemon pretty convincingly there. So okay,
I think it's acceptable.
Yeah.
Oh, I just noticed you haven't included the Angmar Warg Rider.
I know. I thought about that, but I was like, we're just looking at the Warg Rider. Me up on that.
We love that from you, Farmer. That's the sort of pedantic hatred we love on this podcast.
Yes.
I would be a hater and I would put them lower than the regular Warg Rider.
Even though it causes terror.
Even though it can cause terror, yes.
True.
I think that Mordor is a much better list, and Ally's way better.
Yeah. So we will move on then from the Serpent Rider to the Rohan Royal Guard mountain, of course.
This is pretty. This is up there. You know,
I'd be a hot take, but I think this is actually also lemon.
Oh, I was going to say that too.
It's not bad.
I think it is our first lemon good cav.
So this is one of the things that makes you really pull your hair out and be like, what the hell is how much does a horse cost then? Because you look at the Citadel Guard, which is a slightly overpriced model with the 7-point horse, and you look at this with the 5-point horse, and you're like, what? What happened? They got those Baragon sweet deals, and he didn't even get his buddies. The Citadel Guard couldn't even get that deal.
They had more.
I grant you. I think Royal Guard without horse are too expensive. That's the main thing. Royal Guard, they're essentially 1 point too expensive, and they pay too few point for their horse, which is a slightly weird way around of doing it, but whatever. Like I think you could realistically make them 9 points on foot, because 10 points for what they actually are, if you look, is a bit dear. But I guess bodyguard, who knows? So another access to
having
bodyguard, heavy cav in a list that does well with heavy cav, aka the Riders of Theoden, essentially. But also these can be used in every Rohan Legion, because unlike that allows them to be mounted. Because like they're good in Theodred's Guard, they're good in Helm's Guard. Even in the mounted versions, obviously in those lists you won't be using a large squadron of them mounted, but you would have several. In Riders of Theoden and regular Rohan, they get the strength 4 charge. Fight 5 on the charge if you've got Theoden, which you will if it's Riders. I mean, that's just 15 points for a 5/5 strength 4 cav on the charge with bodyguard. I mean, that's
That is
that's
pretty.
dank.
What
pretty
more
nutsy.
can you say on that?
Yeah.
That is a solid lemon.
5/5 strength 4 d6. Like
Bodyguards.
yeah,
Throwing
bodyguard.
spears.
Yeah.
Throwing spears. So
All of
is,
that's good.
is it going above or below the Serpent Rider?
Below the Serpent Rider.
Come on. Don't. What are you on about?
They still don't have
Obviously
lances.
below.
They don't have lances.
Yeah. There's still only 3. Yeah. They've still only got the strength 4 at best, which
Actually,
doesn't
talking
always do the
about
work.
that actually makes me want to put the Cataphract above the Merkle Carav now, because I was just thinking about what I just said, and I was like, 5/5, strength 4, 15 points. I'm like,
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Uh-oh.
that literally
We were-
describes that guy as well.
that
I'm
good
like,
use case is pretty.
Me and Elliot
good,
were fighting the corner of the
Whoa.
cataphract, you know.
yeah. But also
That's
that
See,
right.
Farmer,
that's-
it's harder doing a tier list than you think, right? Because you do the arguments for each individual thing, and then
Yeah.
it comes around later on.
yeah. Well, at least I
Farming
didn't.
in his
I
armchair.
noticed-
Yeah. After
I
that.
noticed my own hypocrisy before anyone else, so that's
No, that's good. No, see, the key thing is, Farmer, you're not meant to notice it. You just keep
Until the
going.
until the
That's-
very end, and then everything's a mess, and then we just go, oh,
Yeah.
That's engagement farming, baby.
yeah,
Get people in the comments being like, but you said this.
yeah, come on,
That's literally usually me. So there you go.
scheme. There we go. Adam, you were going to say on this one?
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. The Cataphract should be top of Silly Nervous for
Are we bumping it up?
the reason.
I
gonna
still
top-
think they're below the Raider because you do have to be within 6 for the 5 value,
Yeah.
whereas it's 12 for the Riders. But
Cool.
also,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's a little
I
bit
also
more
think they're below the
conditional.
radar.
A little adjustment. Yeah, okay. So, but we're happy with the Royal Guard there, bottom of lemon.
There's something else
Yeah.
that we need to consider.
Go
I
on.
love this. Which is more durable cav are more likely to get more charges over the course of the game.
Yeah.
So there are arguments for the Royal Guard above the Serpent Rider. There are arguments for the Cataphract above the Raider. I'm happy to be shot down, but it is another
Ooh.
consideration.
No, you're right. Yeah,
Well,
they can
Royal-
take more. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, Adam, the counterpoint I think to that is more with the Royal Guard, because they're D6. You're much more likely to strike the horse first, thus ruining that charge bonus over time.
But is
Theory.
it ruining that? Because then they're providing more value to your army over time.
But against the strength 4, yeah, against the against a D4 target, the horse. I mean, that would just be a dead Serpent Rider because they're just going to kill the Serpent Rider.
against a strength.
Oh yeah,
Sorry. Yeah, a strength 4.
Against what I mean is that if you're hitting a D4 thing, you might
Oh, I
as well
see.
hit the rider. So
Yeah.
if they're going to kill something, even if they kill your horse, you then got a D6 bodyguard model who can shield.
Yeah.
Who can just
That's
try
true.
and hold that for as long as
they're,
possible.
they're definitely great value for only 2 extra points. 15 compared to the 13. It's hard.
I do think it's kind of hard to directly compare them because I think primarily Royal Guard come up in Riders of Théoden, in
But
which
aren't
case
you-
they are a more heavily mounted army, whereas Serpent Gut Riders are never in that context. So it's kind of hard for me to look at them exact comparisons.
in
But
that comparison. Aren't you usually taking them with throwing spears as well, though? I don't know how often I see them without the throwing spears.
I think
And
I
then
see them without
17
throwing spears a
points.
fair amount. They're good with throwing spears, but it's far from a universal upgrade. That's like a pure flavor taste thing. I think
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that's really up to the individual person
Yeah.
how much you like to skirmish. Because
Yeah.
Royal Guard with throwing spears, like it's not necessary. It depends on the kind of list you're using.
Yeah, it's not integral. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's nice but not required.
Yeah. We'll leave them there for now. We'll see. We'll have a revisit at the end. We will move on now to the.
I did
Sorry, go
I
on.
did like that. I did like that discussion point from Adam. So no, like it made me partially
That's fine.
reconsider, but not really.
So do my life choices.
That's what he was hoping for. But we'll move on to the Orc Tracker on Wild.
is a funny
Oh
one.
baby, this could be spicy.
Ash's favourite model.
I think James could be having another visit with this 7-point War Rider.
Absolutely not.
Oh,
Oh,
I think this is a really interesting case because this profile is way better than the amount of usage it gets. which is basically none. Like trackers on Warg are fine, and they basically never get used. And the reasoning I'm guessing is because they don't have models, and official tracker models are a pain in the ass to convert. And I mean, you could just use mounted Warg Riders with bows, because I mean, no one's ever going to actually use those official models unless they're running Wolves of Isengard, because that's basically the only legion you'd ever use them in, the only list you'd ever use them in. Yeah, I think this is a fine profile. I think this is probably silly nervous, maybe nervous.
Damn.
Ooh.
That's someone who literally never
there's several ways you can look at this model, right? It's 12 points for. You guys like the Rohan Outrider, right? This
not a horse.
It's the evil equivalent, but you can think of it as it's still strength 4 when it charges. Like, let's be honest, the Warg Rider. If you want to kill the Warg Rider's going to die anyway. So this guy, yeah, he's a little bit more fallible, but he's also quite cheap. Like, you're paying 12 points. Like, what are you expecting? And the Warg just provides a little bit more mobility to get around the line, shoot spear supports, a little bit more play in terms of doing destroy the supplies or something like that. These guys are just the most annoying models because you actually have to do something about them, because otherwise they're just going to shoot you all game and maybe get an objective.
I think that D3 is actually kind of an issue for Cav. I think D4 you can get away with, because if you lose a fight to a model, you 1 in 3 chance of dying, like a regular D3 strength 3 spud model, like a 1-on-1 kind of thing. Yeah, but 1 in 3 chance of dying. That becoming a 50-50 means that their ability as little combat units is quite significantly diminished.
Yeah,
and as
archers, you really want them in combat.
No, but then that's the thing. Trackers aren't good enough archers that you rely on them in shooting wars ever. I mean, Ash will definitely vouch for this. Trackers are like the little shitters you never expect to do anything because they're so cheap. And then when they do stuff, every single thing is a victory because they're getting their points back. 40 points or 50 points on 8 or 10 trackers very rarely will be a disappointing investment.
Yeah,
that is.
Whereas if you invest
the farmer, you're hitting on
points.
Yeah, you're hitting on a great point here. You can effectively take 2 orc trackers on Warg or 5 orc trackers. And I know what I'd rather take. And then if I want a cheap,
it's not one or the other though.
No, it isn't. Yeah, it's not one or the other. But you'd rather have, for 12 points, I think you'd rather have a D5 Warg Rider as opposed to the D3 tracker.
That's kind of what it comes down to me. I think the difference between D3 and 4 is actually rather large. Like, I really like the throwing spear only Warg Riders. I like ring 2 of them for 24 points, and they're great. I think the problem that the Warg tracker has is it splits incentives in a way that it feels confusing to use. Because you're right, having a bow, it's the same way that the Raider having the bow is nice, and you're just sort of blinking around shooting. And in theory, it's as good in combat as any other Warg Rider. But again, the potential for flubbing and the potential to get blowback from the D3 is slightly higher, and that feels a bit less. You're less likely to just throw it in willy-nilly. You don't have the throwing spear, so you're more likely to do half moves to try and shoot, which means you're less likely to be in a really aggressive position to take advantage of things.
Yeah,
I think it's just. I think it actually, in reality, it's better than maybe it gets treated, like by what Ash was saying. But at the same time, like the incentive sets are confusing, so it's like it's an awkward model to get your head around and get the most out of because of that.
I think
it's
having
sort of contradictory.
I think having 1 in the list is decent because it just gives you another angle.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few lists where I think they come into their own. Like, I actually think they're pretty good in Assault on Lothlorien because being able to move half and move 5 inches and still shoot and get the +1 to wound, you can like be on the end. Yeah, well, I mean, you can be on the end of the flank, so you're away from their archers. You can just be annoying and be like, right, this one bowman is going to be like just hanging in 12 inches of that guy on the end of your line, and he's going to keep plinking one shot. And
Yeah.
if you're doing a long skirmishy game, they're actually pretty valuable. But I think in regular
have-
model, they're just not that great.
I mean, James, Adam, you've convinced me that James definitely isn't having another friend yet. But
Yeah.
I think Silly Nervous is really pushing it
Mm.
from.
Yeah,
Well,
I would.
I'll
I would.
compromise. I'll compromise in Nervous, but realistically, I think they're probably more dog.
I'd argue top of Nervous. I think they're
I
the
would-
top of Nervous.
I would put them somewhere around here. I would much.
They're
I think they're better than the
fine
Ride
with
of
them
Rohan.
being above. I'm fine with them being above the Morgul Knight, but Sam will never forgive you if you put him above a
Yeah, I
Khandish
think I do agree. as
horseman.
well.
Okay, all right. I'm still thinking that Knight of Minas Tirith needs to move though.
Yeah.
That's for the
so I think
end.
I think Riders of Rohan are just better than Ultrax and Warg, but I don't think Ultrax and Warg are worse than the Knight of Minas Tirith. So I
Oh,
think that guy's got to move.
interesting. We'll leave him here for
I'll
now.
come
We'll
back
have a
to it.
good revisit at the end. We'll have a
Yeah.
good revisit. We'll put him down there. Okay, so he's going at the bottom of Nervous for the audio listener.
I'm
Okay,
almost getting right into the tier
I love
list
it.
spirit. I
know.
love it.
Brilliant, isn't it?
We will move on to the Rivendell Knights.
Woo!
Possibly my favourite cab model in the entire game.
With your favourite hero, that is Elrond.
Indeed. Come on, it's the synergies.
So
So
when I first started playing this game, these guys were hot shit, and they were described as the Apache gunship of SBG because they
Come
did
on.
it all better than everyone else, and the scenarios that existed back then just weren't as punishing for highly mobile elite cavalry armies. I gotta say their luster has faded somewhat since then, but only because like knights as a whole cav army, I think just aren't really that viable anymore. Like they're just there's too many scenarios that they can't work in. Having said that, as like a two of them in a list, kind of like that we've been talking about the rest of these cavs. So they're no longer rubbing shoulders with the Riders of Rohan and the Royal Guard. They're now rubbing shoulders with Serpent Riders, and in that case, these are the kind of models you'd be happy to spend that many points on because they just do everything extremely well.
Yeah, everything.
the fight 5 with a lance is phenomenal.
Great.
Yeah.
You
D6.
can't
Excellent
you can't beat it.
Excellent archers.
Don't care.
Excellent
22
shooting.
points. Expert rider, D6, fight 5, lance, elven made sword. If you get charged by a fight 5 model, you got that advantage against like an Easterling or something, or like if you're fighting a cataphract and you're the Emperor, it's like cool. You've still got the advantage, even though you're, there's a lot going for it.
Rerolling to hit within 6 of your leader as well.
Yeah, although that doesn't come into it so much outside of the what we're saying of the pure knight army.
Yeah,
I think
great to have.
I think just for being fucking like the GOAT in all the categories, like even though they may not be perfect in terms of like context and everything, the fact that they're just the best at every individual thing essentially has to put them fairly high up for me.
Yeah.
I think they've.
I put them in Lemon quite comfortably.
I think, they get let down by the fact that elves in general have dodgy hero choices and are a bit expensive.
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
fit in
I think
lots of them.
bottom left for me. I think they're worse than Royal Guard just because Royal Guard are value up the ass.
They do have for
Yeah,
nine
hell of
points
value.
without
just-
going there.
On a very sort of basic level, if you're thinking of a cav tier list, you're thinking Riverdale Knights in Lemon. Just
Yeah, you just are.
overall, in context, yes, they're. I mean, that's why they're at the bottom. So yeah, we don't need to.
Adam, what do you think about that?
Respect,
Are you happy?
quality.
I think they're sort of jack of all trades, aren't they? And
Yeah.
they're nearly masters of all. But it's just the idea of getting a niche use out of those Serpent Riders coming in the flanks and just killing stuff. They do it so good for their points. Royal Guard just surviving the game, hitting like trains in Rise of Theoden. They do their job perfectly. These guys, Rivendell Knights, do their job sort of 90% all the time, which is really good. But they're just a little bit expensive, aren't they?
Yeah.
So I think bottom of
Lemon.
Lemon.
Yeah, Lemon. Okay.
they get points for being basically the kings of all the stats, but
Yeah.
they lose points for being well expensive. But also, they're not so expensive that you can't buy them. That's the thing. They're not like too expensive. They're like fairly
You've
costed.
got them in. And what? They're the most expensive cav here that isn't Marauder.
They're the most expensive.
general
Like they
cav.
have the potential to be the most expensive. Fun fact: they have the potential to be the most
Oh yeah,
expensive
with a banner. Yeah.
troop. If they can have a banner and a warhorn and a weapon swap.
And a horn. Damn. Yeah. Not bad.
Well,
Crazy.
you can make it cost like 80 points. It's
80
crazy.
point of ignite. Love it.
I'm not sure exactly how it's 79. I think it is 70.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. Okay.
78 maybe.
Rivendell Knight will end up at the bottom of Lemon. We will move on to the Rohan Outrider that you were saying you do not prefer on the horse farmer.
Yeah, Farmer was throwing
So-
shade at this cavalry model.
Indeed.
So this is a victim of circumstance, another victim of circumstance, which
Mm.
puts it in the company of the Morgul Knight, in my opinion. In the sense that this is in theory a good model, and it is a member of the 5-Point Horse Club, the Baragon Frequent Purchases
Good
Club.
space to be in.
But
It's where you want to be, really.
Yeah.
so, okay, they're basically Rangers of Gondor with Fight 3, which is a big downgrade, and then they get a rule. They get Expert Rider, and they get a rule that means they can benefit from a stand fast no matter how far away they are, although they do still need line of sight,
Yeah.
which is niche but good for the kind of.
I think that's actually a really cool rule.
for a cavalry
in a-
model, especially. Yeah,
For a cavalry model, in an outrider context, it definitely hits that. No, it's very themey. I like it.
Thinking about that
Yeah.
kind of rule, are there many other rules like that where you can benefit from a stand fast regardless of range?
there's none other. I mean, there are other stand fasts. There's the mirror of that rule where your stand fast will affect the entire battlefield.
That's
Like
what
the
I mean.
Emperor has
So,
that.
kind of similar, but in terms of like
Terrain as well.
additional rule in a profile, yeah, very unique.
It is fairly unique. Yeah, the Vanguard special rule.
Yeah.
Um,
I like it.
Downsides, they do get strength 4 on the charge in pure Rohan.
Yeah.
They're not in Riders of Théoden, so you don't see them much.
Yeah.
They you see them, but you mostly see them in Theodred's Guard, and then in that list they're better used as like the bowline infantry. They don't get axes as standard; they only get swords, which is a bit
Yeah.
sad because again, then you could be arguing like strength 5 potential is pretty always pretty lit. They don't get the shield; they do get a 3+ shoot value, which is nice, and it makes them a little bit better at skirmishing in some contexts. But they do count towards your bow limit always. So most of the
Yeah.
time, people would think like what will quite often happen is if you're running a skirmishing Riders of Rohan and you aren't using Riders of Théoden for whatever reason, you'll have like 1 as your last guy, or as many as you can have on top of your Royal Guard, essentially. But nowadays,
Yeah.
most of the time, people will be using Riders of Théoden, which
Yeah.
doesn't have these in it.
No. So it's,
Confusingly.
in an odd. What do you think then? Where's it going?
For me, it's bottom of Nervous, below the Morgul Knight.
I think it's better than the Morgul Knight, but that's again splitting hairs.
I don't think so. I think the Morgul Knight is a victim of circumstances in one of the most effective lists in the game. I think this is split between too many lists and doesn't have a home. The horse version specifically. On the foot version, I think it's great.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a home.
I do like the Morgul Knight. Adam, what do you
Yeah.
think?
I'd put it behind the Morgan.
Behind?
This will not be the last Rohan model that doesn't have a home in any list on this
Okay.
list. There's one more.
and
I
on
see him coming.
And we will
He's
move
coming
on
up.
to the Mahud Raider.
Woo! Okay,
Interesting.
now this is juicy. The mount itself is one of the best mounts in the game. That impact hit is so horrendous when it goes well. Just being able to do a little strength 4 cheeky damage instantly is really good.
Yeah. This is a very expensive cavalry model, but it does have it's another Fight 4 Lance Cavalry. Sorry, not Fight 4, Strength 4 Lance Cavalry. It's a weird one because actually the Impaler rule can sometimes leave you kind of high and dry if you're trying to pin some models, especially if you're trying to do some sort of heroic combat bouncing. you try and pin the model with a bunch of your guys, especially if you happen to have Camel Kings, which is a little bit different than this, and then they accidentally kill the model you were trying to heroic combat with Impaler. That's a little bit
awkward.
cringe.
Oh no,
Yeah.
the terror of accidentally killing loads of stuff.
Yeah.
Like I actually think the troop version of this is probably better than like Impaler specifically. The camel rule is better on the troops than it is on the heroes. The 18 points.
only fault I can
19
see-
with the blowpipe.
The only
Fight
fault
three,
I see in
my
these
issue.
is the fight 3. Like if they were fight 4, I think they'd easily sit in lemon.
I don't. Well, yeah. I mean, if they were
With
fight 4,
points,
yeah, but that's a big upgrade.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing I would say is they are like with a blowpipe, they are 19 points, which for a fight 3 cav is a lot of points.
Yeah, it's rough, isn't it?
19.
And they're courage 2, and like there are some problems with them. They're not value. I think they're kind of awkward to use in a lot of ways.
It's just you take that impaler hit, they charge you, you then shield, probably going to be a higher fight value, and then charge them the next turn if you win a move
They
off
have a great,
and kill them.
They have a fantastic niche of being able to really annoyingly wipe out a hero's horse on the charge. 'Cause
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
if it's a regular horse, it's a 50-50. They just gank the horse before the combat even starts, which is super annoying for your big hero, especially if you were counter charging with the cav. Take away the
Yeah.
cav bonus, and you're like, well, hey,
Yeah.
take that, fool.
They
Get
come
on
in,
the floor.
and just
Yeah,
take it out.
pretty much. And this is a profile that gets kind of screwed by its proximity to the 7th Rider, because
Yeah.
they are in adjacent lists, and most of the time the hood gets allied into Harad 7 Horde, and then if you're playing 7 Horde, you're like, oh, why don't I take the 6 point cheaper fight 4 Lance Cavalry? You know,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate. I think they're good, but I don't think they're higher than.
Where do we think they end up?
I don't think they're higher than the Iron Hills goats. I think they're
No.
their closest comparison.
Do you think they go up into Silly Nervous then? Is that your?
Yeah.
I think they're either top of Nervous or bottom of Silly Nervous.
Okay.
For me, they're happily in the Silly Nervous.
Silly Nervous. Right?
I think personally, I think top of Nervous, but what do you think,
Adam?
I'd say sort of bottom of Silly Nervous or top of Nervous.
I was going to say top of Nervous, but I'm not.
Ooh.
I'm not.
Okay,
I mean,
why don't we roll a dice for this one?
If you
Because
have just 2 of them, they can cause absolute carnage.
I just think you're
Going to roll a farmed.
having just doing a strength 4 hit. It's the fact it's a strength 4 hit. It's
And you don't have to move in a straight line.
Sorry, I'm going to do
don't-
the get cam here. Right, so we're
you
going
can just
1, 2, 3. Is Nervous. 4, 5, 6.
right. This is a little bit sus. What the hell? We
Let's
can't
do
even
it.
see the dice when you roll it. We're not even going to see the dice.
That's a 5.
okay, there you go.
So it's going into
Back off.
Nervous.
Yippee!
I think practically speaking, they're similar. Yeah,
the farm
they've
dice
got a lot of
decides.
strengths.
Okay. We will move on to the Sons of Earl, or the Son of Earl.
Oh. Ali again would be mounting a bit of a defense for these bad boys.
They
They're
are
so
bad boys.
cool, but they're just a little bit too expensive, aren't they? And you can't really take them.
No,
He's got that dog in him. You know what I'm saying?
he does.
They're just they're really screwed by the list constriction, aren't they?
I mean, when you think
They're not-
fight 4, strength
constricted by
4,
list
D6, yeah, with an
They're
axe.
not constricted. They're not constricted by list at all. But their rule that makes them actually strong is attached
Sorry.
to
Yes.
the Rohan
Fine.
heroes.
Yeah, you're right. But it's almost so powerful of a rule that it is a list constriction, realistically.
Yeah.
Actually,
So they have armored horses, they have fight 4, they have strength 4 basic in the Rohan list, and they have axes, which means you can get strength 6 on the charge with these guys, which is pretty sick.
It's pretty lemon.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. But the real thing that made these guys great, and I tell you, back in the day, in the old edition, they just had 2 attacks, and they were 22 points, and they were awesome on the charge.
Yeah.
But yeah, in a list now, in the context of heavy cavalry, when you get fight 5 from the Royal Guard with Theoden, it's just, unfortunately, they're kind of left in the dust. The fact that they don't have that, even with Ale, like, yeah, getting 6 strikes from a strength 6 troop cab is pretty hilarious. it's still not good enough to justify taking Ale the Young. And there's a reason why you pretty much never see these things, and it's because they're just good enough for 20 points.
Yeah.
Like, I think for real talk, 20 points puts them in the same bracket as the Knights of the Lamroth that are made good in conjunction with an actually good hero,
Yeah.
Imrahil.
Imrahil. Yeah.
And these guys are made good by conjunction with a shitter hero. So I think probably that tells us where they should go, which is to say worse than Knights of the Lamroth.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that makes
they
our little
become...
bracket look more symmetrical, which is nice.
No, I totally agree. They're so good that having an additional attack is such a powerful rule. You have to take them
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Early Young. And yeah, I mean, I don't know why they could have just kept the 2 attacks, and then now we're talking. Now you've got a little bit of list variation and choice, but they're not. So they're in dog.
Yeah, because if they were 2 attacks and they weren't restricted to Ale and they were like 21, 22 points like they used to be, and then they just weren't in the Riders of Theod and Legendary Legion, that's an actual question.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, do you take
Now
Death,
you're having
or
some
do you
interesting
take-
thoughts.
Do you take Theodred and the Sons of Ale for a little bit of extra like murder power? You know, because that's insane. That's a big difference. And they're courage 4, but then again, Royal Guard, they have bodyguards.
Yeah, exactly. There's just other options.
They're
I
overshadowed
really like these guys, but
Yeah,
in
same.
every which way.
Are you happy with it there, Adam? Kind of middle of dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy.
He has no opinion on such things.
I know.
I mean,
They're-
they're fine.
They're
It's
beneath.
yeah.
They're fine. Yeah. Okay. Well, we will move on to the Warg Marauder.
This guy's cool.
This guy is very good. He's up in silly nervous.
It's got a lot going for
Why
him.
don't you lead off with this one, Adam? Because we keep waiting for you to do it last.
Yeah.
I think this guy's pretty neat. He's pretty useful in AOL just to artificially bump up your goblin numbers. They cause terror. It's pretty handy.
Yep.
Nice.
They've got a janky little rule where they get D5, don't they?
Yeah. D5.
Shield guys alive.
Yeah.
I think to have 1 in a list is pretty fun. But you would never take more than 2, would you? I mean, they are very expensive.
Yeah.
And
30 points, yeah.
And once you get rid of the Warg, like what you're left with is literally less than half the points of the model, or half the points of the model.
Yeah.
With 12 points of bits.
Yeah.
But
Grublings.
you do get 4 attacks on the charge, baby.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I mean, to be
it's
fair,
a party bus, isn't it?
Yeah.
fair talk. If they win a fight, they literally do the same amount of damage as Boromir for 30 points. I mean,
Yeah.
8 attacks at strength 4 is hilarious.
Yeah.
Boromir doesn't cause terror.
No,
Yeah,
Boromir confirmed.
See, you're only making my argument stronger. They just
They all.
That's what I'm trying to do before Farmer Maggot scythes you down double-handed.
no.
Ooh!
It's not. He loves these.
Yeah.
I think they are just a ton of fun. I think the problem they have is they're kind of hard to include. Like they're in Moria, which is a dog shit list, so I don't even really think about that in outside the context of the Watcher. And then they're in AOL, which is kind of a list that doesn't really need extra tricks. But what I would say is they're 1 bow limit, but they get you 2 shots, and in a list that can actually be quite high value in AOL because it can give you just a little bit of extra bow fire, especially when they can actually move full 10 inches and still shoot twice.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
They can shoot if they're in combat as well, although you lose attacks if you do it, so people don't tend to do that as much anymore. Like there is actually a very, very niche and hilarious build of AOL where you max these guys out and then skirmish fully, like range skirmish people fully, because they can move full and still shoot.
Yeah.
And they have Cave Dweller. And if you need to dismount, you guarantee keep your wargs around. And you don't no individual part counts towards breaking you until they kill a shield guy, both bow guys, and a warg. So if they all dismount and you send one of all of the bow guys to the back of the board, none of the deaths count as dead.
Yeah, to the break. Yeah,
which is niche, but it can work because it's like, oh, you've only got 40 models, but actually
that actually sounds really good fun. And then you pair it with you can enrage the wargs that you've now just dismounted and go, oh,
it's top tier memery, my friend.
Ash is ordering
that is memery.
8 8 of these.
No,
right
and the
now.
best thing about these is you don't have to order them
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say
you can just
easiest
have
conversion
your
ever.
wild wargs or your warg riders, and then you just stick 3 goblins on, and the
Yeah.
poses of the goblins with their little wide legs stance
Yeah,
like this.
Yeah.
They're so easy to convert.
It's
Even
it's actually very easy to convert.
least hobby and gamer, I've been able to convert. I think I've got 3 of these.
Never underestimate the genuine confusion that can happen with these models as well, in terms of like the actual what they can the weird situations that can come up. Like if you end up with, this is a big tangent, but if you have a trapped Warg Marauder with like 6 models around it, and then that combat gets hurled into, but nothing dies, who's fighting what? It's literally 4 separate models fighting 6 models. And also, where do you put them? Because there's not enough space for
No.
those models
And
in
it's
the
not
base.
said in the
Yeah. Also, this
FAQ,
is-
please, Jay.
I mean,
sort of,
so this is
sort
the
it out.
reason that's the case is that model was created without the rules in mind at all back in the day. Some guy was like, "What if I had 3 goblins and a warg?" And the people writing
Yeah.
the rules were like, "How the fuck am I supposed to
Yes.
make this work?" So they just decided to make it so they could never be dismounted by anything. They were essentially a cavalry model that could just get knocked prone and get back up, and that was really
Hold
OP.
on.
Yeah, and also they could shoot twice all
remember
the
that.
time, no matter about combat, and they essentially had three wounds, so you could do 2 and they'd still be alive. It was just a complete bullshit
That's
profile.
pretty. That's cool.
I remember them.
But then they made
I
it so
remember-
that they can now get dismounted, and they had to write a big long rule. But that allows you to do funny stuff like get 1 model to the board edge, and you get to fire 3 goblins off in recon, or an objective. They've got 1 guy on it. You're like, well, I now have 3 on it, so fuck you, idiot.
Genuinely,
basically, Warg Marauders are funny and great, and I like them.
Yeah.
I think they've got to be above the camel because the camel and the Warg Marauder are
Yeah,
kind of
I think-
memey, and
Yeah, I think
the
that's
Warg
about right.
Marauder is so memeable. Like the top 8 cav are really, really good, and then we've got the 2 memeable ones that are also really good, but not like the top
They
of
don't
competitive
break
play.
into that. Yeah.
I think, but important thing is in a 1v1 tournament, any of these models, the Warg Marauder would win.
Yeah,
They just
That's
beat the
why I
shit
put
out of all the
the
rest of
It's
them.
at the top of the mean category that
well, you
isn't-
just
yeah.
think like
Yeah, but with that logic, we'd put like Balrog at the top of most tier lists.
that's
Yeah,
why I
exactly,
put Sauron and Lemon. Let's go.
Yeah, every time.
But-
Winning the 1v1.
No, but that's what I said. That was mostly a joke. But yeah, like they
These
would
are- They've just got such good like
Mostly, it's not
anti-
entirely.
Yeah, true.
1v1 on Rust, they'd win every time. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, you can actually the fact that they get 3 attacks as a cavalry model, like
Yeah,
you
that's
charge
very
your hero in, you counter charge them, you've now got more attacks than most heroes. Like they definitely deserve their place in Silly Nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like they also have the fun thing where if you charge a bat swarm in with them in AOL +1 to wound, knock down, it's literally
Yeah.
like a killing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm happy with them there.
We will leave them
That's
there
a fine spot. Yeah.
towards the lower end of Silly Nervous. We will move on to the second to last pick here, the Galadriel.
The last actual cav for now.
Yes, in the game. Yes, yeah.
This is the worst elf cavalry unit by far. They're expensive. They don't have any good, really tricks. You never see them allied because they're so expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not true. I'll sometimes see one of these
Sorry.
with a shield and bow. If a Galadriel is dropped in and you've got a full warband and she's maxed out her bows, you'll sometimes see one of the bows be a Galathrim Knight. Sometimes.
Okay,
Depends
fair
on
enough.
what she's being allied with.
But that doesn't.
I've used them and I don't think they're that great.
Yeah, I use them in my sometimes back in the day when I played pure Lothlorien, and you have to take them because they're the only cav, but they're really bad. I don't think I've ever used Fleetfoot.
I mean, Adam, you used them at Warhammer World. Did you have that actually? Any? You didn't, did you?
Yeah, I had one.
the
I had
Masters.
one at Masters, and I took one to the Nations Cup.
Hmm.
I mean,
Okay.
once again, you just have to take one, right? Because you need a cavalry model sometimes.
Yeah,
Every
Yeah.
list should have 1 cav, maybe 2.
At least one troop, yeah.
Yeah.
they're
So it's
definitely
just a tax
better.
you pay.
They're
But they
definitely
finally
better
got
than the
justice.
Galamroth.
They got the hand and a half sword in the FAQ. They randomly got
Here.
granted to have a hand and a half sword after so long, and I'm like,
That's deserved.
thank fuck for that, because that's the bare minimum. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing with them is they're essentially like, as we said before, you take a budget Mirkwood Cav and you give it the ability, you give it the ability to take a bow, which is 2 points, and you give it an armored horse, which you would never voluntarily pay for on an already expensive cavalry because you want
No.
value, you don't want D5 horse, and you get Fleetfoot, which is a nice special rule, but it is niche. It's like you're taking a really good value thing and you're making it less good value, and that's the end of it, really. And then when they're fully kitted out, they're literally like, oh, you're 1 point cheaper than a Riv Knight, but it's just the lance is the difference.
The lance is just such an unbelievable piece of war gear on a cavalry. That's
Such an
like 5.
Yeah,
This
And in a
screams
way, that-
nervous
yeah.
to me.
I
No,
think
this is a
I think
dog.
this is top of dog.
Really?
I think they are a mandatory. They're a necessary evil in the list that they're in. I don't think anyone ever thinks, "Oh boy, Galathrym Knights." Now, if
Realistically, I think for 12
was the
points,
same
the
points,
Dunlin horse.
but he could
is
have
even better.
If Caliborn could have an armored horse and had Fleetfoot, he'd suddenly be goated. Best hero, not really, but you know, they just the presence of armored horses in Lothlorien makes Caliborn's lack of one look a bit weird. Is all I'm saying.
It's a little bit sus. They need to sort that out. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Maybe a Lothlorien Legion where Celeborn's mounted. Ooh.
Ooh.
Just because how cheap the Dunlin horses are, I think the Knight, the Galadriel Knight, is actually worse than that. Just above the.
I think so.
Nice. Okay. I'm down.
It's like 9 points difference.
Yeah.
I think it's really telling, by the way, that they are actually in many ways better than a Rivendell Knight in the sense that they have, if we're talking about pure list, they don't get the shooting reroll thing, but they do have Fleetfoot and an armored horse and resistance to magic. If we're talking pure, it's just the lance is everything, and obviously the
lance is
access to a
everything.
shooting
When
spam
you-
type thing.
When you charge and you have, and you're fighting a fight, sorry, you're fighting a D6 model and you've only got, I mean, I'm saying only got, you've got 4 dice to roll a 6. That's not consistent enough. That lance doing the damage is where it is at, you know.
They're just different profiles, and I think it's interesting because like that makes me almost think the Rivendell Knights is less good. But I'm going to stand by my feelings on that one initially. I think it's important.
on the
It shows
cusp.
how important some killing power actually is to cavalry models.
Yeah, absolutely.
So are we
And
happy
now-
with it?
Because I think the only one we've got above there that isn't a lance or strength 4 in some form is the Rohan Outrider, and I think that could maybe be dropped down actually for that reason.
Well, so are
Ooh.
we happy with it here in dog?
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
happy with
definitely.
Yeah,
that.
we're happy. Okay, so I reckon we save the Arnor Cav until we've rejiggled everything that is currently in the game.
Okay.
We do that last. So,
Fine.
any key things people would like to move?
I'd like to see the Knight of Ministerius below the Candish Horseman.
I'm fine with that. But there
So-
being unlimited bows on both those models is
The
better.
Carnage Horseman
So-
edging on the top of nerve,
and also-
constantly nervous.
The
No, no,
Rohan,
and
the
The other way
Rider
around. The
Rohan
other way
goes
around.
up
So
there
the Rider
now.
Rohan is still better than Canned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you've done that the wrong way around essentially. So Rider Rohan should be top of nervous. There.
Oh, I see. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was meaning the Knight of Ministerius is going down by 2.
I see.
And I also want. I think I want to drop the Outrider just to the top of dog. But other than that, I'm happy with this. I think
Not against the Outrider being top of dog. Yeah, it's in an awkward spot.
And then because I mean, it's kind of okay there because the Cataphract is similar, but we were also talking that they're commonly swapped with axes, and also the value there is pretty good. Like super cheap is different to expensive and no killy. Like 15 points, fight 4, fight 5 without any bonuses is cheap enough to
15
sort of
points, that's with the
game.
axe. Yeah.
15 points with if we're talking without 14 points, you know, whereas the Galathrym Knight has to go 2-handed, which it now can do, praise be, to get any killing power. It's just, and also, yeah, it's just sad.
Was that a Handmaid's Tale reference there?
No. It wasn't actually, but yeah, we can say that it was if it makes me seem more literary and well read.
Love it. Any other? I mean, I'm down to move the Outrider down to dog. I won't lose sleep over that.
It upsets me.
Oh, it upsets
But-
Ashley.
It upsets me because I do kind of like that. But I mean,
Adam, what do
again,
you think?
your reasoning of everything above it being strength 4
I think
Well,
we're
I
just
minus
splitting
a
hairs here.
cataphract, but that's different.
What was that, Adam?
Yeah,
I think we're splitting hairs here. Let's just move on to what's going to be the most cracked model in the game.
Yes.
Let's
here
move
we
on
go.
to the
Love
Arnold
that from
Cav.
Adam.
Where's it going?
So let's
So-
first of all say How many points do we think this is? Because on the emergency pod, I went out and said they're going to stick with the 5-point horse rule, add it to a regular
Another
warrior
member
mod.
of the 5-point horse club. Come on.
Aragon's
5-point horse
5
club.
Horse club.
Yeah.
And he's gonna join the exclusive 5-point horse club, and it's gonna be added to a regular Warrior of Arnor, and it's gonna be the most cracked model in the game at 13 points.
It is not going to
God,
be.
can you imagine? Can you imagine if Serpent Guard were fucking D6? That's
So
what that is.
realistically, it's gonna be 14 points, right? They're gonna say, oh, it's gonna be 6 points for the horse.
I think if
But
you
still,
want this
even
model to
then,
be
that's
balanced,
broken.
it's
So it
great.
might not
If you
be
want this model
14
to be
points.
balanced, it has to be more than that.
Yeah, it
And
can't.
I think,
I don't think.
but
it's
also knowing how I do that a certain rules writer thinks he's going to be dogged in his determination, and it is going to be 14 points. Probably.
14. Woo! And if
I
that's
think
the case,
if this
this
wanted to be
goes
balanced, it should be 18.
18
that's a
points.
big jump.
Holy
18 is probably an
Right.
overreaction.
I think
It should-
James and
thing is,
we called on the pod like 15, 16 is a
I
you know
think
like a
16 would be about
cataphract
right.
sort of
Yeah.
range because it's the D6. Like you
gonna
get
be-
you know
So
So-
I'm calling it. It's going to be 14 points. It will be.
I think that's realistic. 14, 15, 16 is the gambler's odds. Those are the real choices. Lower than that is the kind of crazy choice.
I love how you just vanished off camera when
Yeah.
you
That was
That's
really
how it
good.
works.
So I'm
like
going
I
with
said, 18 is me overreacting, but I specifically feel that if you're going to add something really high value to a list that is so one-dimensional, if you're going to cover off a weakness of an extremely one-dimensional list that's already really strong, even while being one-dimensional, you have to overprice that thing.
Yeah.
Because no one's allying these things. It's only going to be in pure honor that you see them significantly. Or
There'll
maybe
be
in
some
Khazad-dûm
people-
alliances.
There will be some people watching this after the fact when the profile's released, and they will know the stat line and
Yeah.
and the way it goes.
I'm going
I-
with
They're
14
definitely going to be
points.
silly nervous.
14 points. No, they're going to be better than the Serpent.
It's
They're going to be better than the Serpent Rider. They're going to be like
Ashes get ready to buy a Honor army right now.
genuinely. They're going to be 14 points. They're 2 better defense than the Serpent Rider. Yeah, they're 1 less courage. Who cares? You've got Armadillo's
If that
Fearless.
holds true, then they're better than the Serpent Rider.
They'd be better.
Yeah.
The only thing they don't have going for them is they can't dismount the horse. Maybe, who knows? They might be able to dismount the horse, and we'll have our first
At
horse
this rate,
profile running around. At this rate,
I think
that's where
that-
they're going to be.
I think they're pretty much guaranteed to be top of City Nervous or better. That's what I'm saying. The worst they're going to be is a better
Yeah.
version of the Cataphract.
In a worst
Agreed.
case scenario, they're
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
one of the
Worst,
best.
And if
but
they're,
like-
and if they're,
in the
and,
game.
because bearing in mind, horses will benefit from Malbeth's save as well,
Save.
That's,
Yeah.
unless it's clarified that they won't, based on the precedents that's set up in the FAQ that horses count as having their faction keywords.
Oh, that's how it would go down.
Ooh.
Yeah,
They're
okay,
going to get the
so-
save. which
So
is really
we
good.
could be seeing the second best model in the Cav game in
that, Adam?
the game added in.
I'm just
basically.
wondering, could it even be better than the Wild Rider? Because if it's 14 points,
It is
Let's-
14.
let's compare this to a Wild
Yeah.
Rider with just a shield, okay? Because that's as close as the Wild Rider can get. The Wild Rider with the shield is it 12, 13?
12.
Okay, so you're paying 2 points more for 1 higher fight, 1 higher defense, 1 less strength, but arguably fearless and Malbeth saves.
And a lance.
That's pretty.
And there
really
is
hard.
the big point. The Lance could.
The lance is
It's fun.
huge.
That's essentially it's ticking the most important boxes for being top cav, which is fight 4, cheap, lance.
Yeah,
Those are the most important
yeah,
boxes.
those are the.
You
Ah,
can
those
even
are
come
the-
back
those are the
to the
box
fucking
points.
yeah.
You're paying
Being
2 points
D6
for
as well.
Yeah.
paying
Oh,
2 points for 1 higher courage. Strength
Yeah,
3 plus
same
1 to
courage.
wound is better than strength
Same
4.
courage. That'd be courage 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
but they'll be fearless. But plus 1 to wound is
Oh.
better than strength 4.
Yeah,
And then you've got
Yeah.
plus 1 fight,
It
which
is.
is unbelievably important on cavalry.
Well,
You've
3
got
to 4 is
D6,
the huge.
D6
Yeah.
for staying
really.
power.
Mhm.
Plus arguably having Malbeth saves. This guy, if he's 14 points, it's
he's the
Persuade
best
me,
Cav
Adam.
model in the game.
So-
he is the best cav model in the
Amazing.
game, ladies and gentlemen.
That's your thumbnail is like me going like,
Confirmed. Yeah.
"Whoa, best cav in the game? Question
I'm gonna
mark?
trim out Farmer. Yeah. The Arnold Cav,
There we
maybe
go.
we will see if it's 14
And it's
points.
been It's been
The thing
settled.
is,
That is the tier list. Let us know what you think of our rankings. Is the Arnold
Yeah.
Cav going to be the best model in the game? Are you
Where
watching
do
this
you
after the
agree?
fact?
Where do you disagree? If, like Farmer, on some of our very first tier lists, you actually ranked in the comments every single thing we tier list, please go ahead and do that because
Let us
we'd
know.
love to
Yeah.
Where
see
did we go wrong?
the
Yeah.
That was
where we.
great.
Now, for the Spotify listeners, though, I'm going to have to very quickly read out the list because
Oh,
they might not have been watching, so they might not know. So
I
go
think
from
that's only me.
there are
Boxes
some that
not-
might not know, and they're wondering. It'll be very quick. So go from worst to best in each tier. We have in the James Goble tier, we have the Hunter Orc and Warg and the Rider of the Dead. Starting at the bottom of the dog tier, and then going up, we have Citadel Guard, the Son of Earl, the Knight of Dol Amroth, the Gladrim Knight, the Dunlending Horseman, and the Rohan Outrider. Starting from the bottom of Nervous, we have the Morgan Knight, Orc Tracker and Warg, Knight of Minas Tirith, Carnish Horseman, and the Rider of Rohan. From the bottom of Silly Nervous, we have the Mahud Raider, Warg Marauder, Iron Hills Goat Rider, Mercury Cav, Eastland Cataphract, and then the Haradrim Raider at the top of Silly Nervous. And then from the bottom of the Lemon category, we have Riv Knights, Rohan Royal Guard, Serpent Riders, Warg Riders, and potentially the Arnor
14
Cav.
points.
At 14
New
points.
Arnor
Remains
Cav.
to be seen. But
If you want to
Obviously-
check out our detailed analysis of the Arnor Cav, check out Emergency Pod 2.
number 3. No,
Number
that was-
3,
That was
Emergency
number
Pod
3.
3.
That was number 3. Oh wait, it was that number 2. That was number 2.
Oh God, Elliot, you're
Really
was
Nash.
your
And that's why you're
NASDAQ
exec,
one.
my friend. Yeah.
Farmer.
The,
I want you to have some closing thoughts before Elliot dismisses us for this evening.
Indeed.
I think that was probably the most accurate tier list you guys have ever done, and that's because I was on it. That's my opinion.
Genuinely, I thought we agreed on a lot of stuff, Farmer, which
Yeah.
is just why we're both top players. What else can I say?
I think my presence helps sand the edges off your really bad opinions that you sometimes have.
Aw.
Not really bad, but you'll have something in your head and you'll be like, oh, this is great. And I'll be like, actually it's not. And you're like, you're right, it's not. And that's
Yeah.
a good team.
I love
Oh,
one of my
where is
favorite
that?
things about these tier lists is I look at a profile and instantly rank it before I've heard any
Yeah.
arguments.
Or is that a U or a VU, like a French U plural?
I could, whichever makes me sound smarter.
Yeah.
Careful.
And on that note,
The French.
I think we will close it out. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching another episode of the Gollum's Gamers podcast.